CBS.
Well, let me start with this.
This really happened.
Have you told the government?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
You want me to just
What's
keep
wrong
going?
with that argument?
What have you
Do
learned?
you know why?
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 It's time for 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
Auburn, California, above the fog and below the snow. The perfect place. Rural, steep cliffs, wooded areas, dirt roads. There are a lot of places to bury a body.
What were you doing that brought you here in 2003?
I was conditioning a horse to do endurance. That was Labor Day weekend, Saturday, that I came up on my normal training ride. Right about here,
Yeah.
I saw a freshly dug hole in the brush. The rest of my ride, I kept trying to justify why it was there.
It sort of haunted you, it sounds like.
It did.
We had just come home from our summer house up in the Sierras. I barbecued.
At dinner were Don and Lynette Vandershoot, their daughter Justine, and her boyfriend Danny. No one had any idea what nightmare was about to unfold after that meal.
I gave her a kiss on the forehead, said, "Good night, I love you."
I spoke to her on the phone. I told her that I loved her.
I was leaving for work at 5:30 in the morning.
Lynette walks into Justine's room. Justine is not there. The dog is on the bed, the front door is open, and her car is gone.
17 years old, disappears, leaves everything behind without trace. It felt sinister.
We're gonna find her.
We searched and searched everywhere.
There were searches that the Vandershoots organized. And then there were searches that we did on our own with our search and rescue teams.
I try to imagine what it was like and what it's going to be like when she comes back.
Danny and his roommate, Brandon, were on the sheriff's radar quickly.
Friends started to come forward about how jealous Danny was of Justine.
They were interviewed that first day. They said, "Oh no, we were home all night." There's a belief right away that they are concealing something about Justine's disappearance.
Okay, have a seat. Have you ever seen anyone die, Brandon?
Tone changes, story changes. He confesses.
Brandon claims that Danny killed Justine.
She's laying down and he's over her and his hands were not released. But
He explained that Danny was choking her and that he helped bury her.
Let's go.
At the end of the interview, Brandon led the investigators to the location of Justine's body.
Justine Vandershoot's body discovered buried in a shallow grave.
The Auburn Journal had a photo of just the brush where Justine had been buried, and I went, oh my gosh. I saw a freshly dug hole 3 days prior to her disappearance. I immediately, contacted the sheriff's department.
That was a big piece of evidence. That's absolutely cold-blooded, premeditated.
The Vandershoot family says they are relieved.
The decision was made to accept pleas to murder from both defendants and give them a life sentence.
Hopefully we can all move on from here.
No one would have ever imagined that 20 years later we would still be fighting for justice for Justine and her family. In 2020, Brandon Fernandez filed a petition to get out of his murder conviction. If Brandon's petition is granted, one of Justine's killers will walk free.
We're fighting for her. That's why we're here. She doesn't have a voice, so we're her voice.
I asked direct questions. I don't know that they're tough questions per se.
When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives? So you would encourage Democrats to work with Donald Trump on an issue like health care?
That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand. That means a civil conversation with perspective.
Sunday morning, Wicked Oscar nominee Cynthia Erivo. A few words from Flo, plus 100 years of The New Yorker. Listen for the trumpet.
It was almost like being face to face with the devil.
Women riding bicycles dismembered.
She just vanished.
48 hours reports.
I fought and fought.
911, what is your emergency?
She disappeared off the face of the earth.
Ever think in your wildest dreams someone might want to kill you?
This almost became a game of psychological warfare.
You're caught. You're gonna go down.
Stream 48 hours, 24/7. CBS Sunday night.
Here we go.
The ultimate tradition continues.
From what I've seen, it's like chaos.
America's longest-running news magazine show is back.
For 60 minutes!
60 minutes.
With a new season.
Hey, let's go.
You're willing to talk about anything. I'm open to all of it. Ask me the hard-hitting questions. So how do you get over the nerves? Honestly, it's a whole bunch of mind
The most influential people.
Who's the best coach in college football? Let me see a mirror so I can look at it.
Are you a billionaire yet? None of your business, man. You trying to get me robbed?
Investigative journalism.
Am I getting a real look at what life is like in here today? Absolutely not.
Do you think people visiting know that these were looted?
When stories threaten our way of life, 60 Minutes demands answers.
This is the pager that Hezbollah was using.
Do you have hope that you may find him yet?
They were asking me to do something that was illegal.
They're fighting for faulty parts?
Yeah.
What is the most important takeaway for our audience?
How big of a problem is doping?
Where was the military?
Why are people suspicious?
That sounds like a problem.
How is this possible?
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Whoa.
Wow.
What is going on?
I'm Scott Pelley. I'm John Worth.
I'm Leslie Stahl.
I'm Bill Whitaker.
I'm Sharon Alfonsi.
I'm Cecilia Vega.
I'm Anderson Cooper.
This is 60 Minutes.
The CBS News original.
Showtime, baby.
It's time for 60 Minutes Sunday on CBS. Don't miss a minute. Now streaming. What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
I'm not asking that we ignore disability, rather that we do not ignore ability.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
It's 21 years since we've lost Justine, but it's still very fresh in our mind.
It was September 18th, 2003, when Justine Vandershoot's remains were discovered in a remote location more than 2 weeks after she disappeared. But it's here in this garden outside her bedroom window that her parents, Dawn and Lynette, still come to find her.
This is actually Justine's little
footprint
there.
Mementos of their youngest child and condolence flowers that poured in after her death are now permanently rooted here.
We call this Justine's garden.
At the center, a towering dogwood tree, a reminder of her favorite trips to the Sierra Mountains, and a sobering measure of how long she's been gone.
When we celebrated the 17th anniversary, Christine said she's been gone as long as she was here on Earth.
Justine's older sister, Christine, sums up what those years have been like for her in one word.
Lonely. She was my best friend. We were only 18 months apart. We did pretty much everything together since day one.
How would you describe Justine? What was her personality?
Vibrant, charismatic, just life of the party. She made you laugh every time she'd say something.
She was a spark in our household, that's for sure.
A little firecracker. Cheerleader, baseball, soccer. She was always on the go.
At 17, Justine was on the verge of graduating high school and wanted to pursue a career in fashion and beauty.
Did she know what she wanted to do in life after high school?
She would sew and design her own shirts and shoes. She had to stand out, and that was what she wanted to do for other people, was make them stand out and feel beautiful.
Instead, her family is now forced to grapple with her murder and its aftermath.
I don't ever want to forget about her, but I don't want to be reminded of what happened.
But it's not so easy to just pack it up and put it away, right?
No, it's not.
In fact, the Vandershoots say it remains an open wound thanks to ongoing efforts by Justine's convicted murderers, Danny Bessemer and Brandon Fernandez, to get out of prison. Retired Placer County Sheriff Ed Bonner.
Including parole hearings, I think the Vandershoots have been back to court 7 times in the last 7 years, always facing the possibility.
It's hard to imagine that both men were once welcome in the family's home. First came Brandon.
I believe it was probably 7th or 8th grade that I started to become friends with him.
A few years later, he introduced the Vandershoots to his friend Danny.
I was actually at a birthday party for me. We had a pool party, and Danny was actually coming to the house to meet me.
But it was Danny and Justine who clicked, and while she was only 15 and he was about 17, they quickly became serious.
From that party on, they were always together.
They even talked about perhaps getting married, is that right?
Yeah, they were very serious. He became kind of like a fixture in our family. His dad wasn't really in the picture, and he didn't really have a mom. So to come into our household and see how a real family was, I think that was something that he was attracted to as well.
The Vandershoots offered Danny the support and stability of a happy family life.
I considered him like a brother almost.
Dawn even got Danny his first real job working with him at an auto dealership and his own key to the house. But looking back, the Vandershoots now see red flags they didn't recognize then.
Controlling.
Telling her who she could see and who she couldn't, monitoring her texts and her cell phone calls. Her frustrations were really starting.
He was so jealous and very possessive over her. She couldn't go out and hang out with friends without him freaking out and getting upset and pouting.
Lindsay Morris was Brandon's girlfriend and says Justine confided in her about problems with Danny.
She even said, I don't know if I break up with him, if he'll ever really let me go.
Towards the end, she was trying to pursue certain things and he was trying to hold her back from. He didn't want anything to change.
And she was sort of growing up and maybe growing apart from him at that point.
Yes, I think so.
Retired Placer County Detective Angela Ford says Danny's fears of Justine leaving him reached a fever pitch in April of 2003 when Justine met someone during a spring break trip to Florida.
Justine had developed a friendship with a Navy sailor there at Pensacola.
Did she tell you about the man she met in Florida?
She did. She liked him. I think it kind of opened her eyes.
When Justine came back, she was definitely talking about this guy and telling all of her friends about how amazing he was and how attractive he was and how she wished she could spend more time with him. Danny had gotten wind of this.
He thought he was losing her.
And they say Danny became consumed with the idea that Justine was cheating on him.
Danny had asked me, would I be willing to wear a wire so I can get her to confess this? He wanted the proof. I told him absolutely not.
And there was another troubling dynamic among Justine, Danny, and Brandon.
Once Justine came into the relationship, their friendship wasn't the same as it was before.
Justine believed Brandon was a serial cheater and a bad influence, so she gave Danny an ultimatum, him or her. Danny and Brandon lost touch for about a year, but by late 2002, they reconnected and decided to become roommates.
It was a triangle that was sort of toxic at that point.
Exactly, and it kind of really fueled when Danny and Brandon moved in together.
Justine continued to be a thorn in Brandon's side.
Brandon hated Justine with a passion, would constantly say that she was a whore and that she manipulated Danny.
In 2003, a few days before Labor Day, Justine attended a party at Danny and Brandon's apartment.
We sat on the front porch just talking, and we both agreed that we were going to get rid of these guys and that we wanted a fresh start and that we could do better.
Justine was getting ready to go to the next stage, Danny was not going to allow it.
Can see clearly now. Clearly, CBS Mornings.
Weekdays on CBS.
Yeah!
Tony, coming?
No, I'm gonna stick around for an hour. Hey! CBS Mornings Plus with Adriana Diaz and Tony DeCopel, right after CBS Mornings.
It's just like mornings.
Plus fun. Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day.
Politics isn't a game. When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives? Politics is about policy. So you would encourage Democrats to work with Donald Trump on an issue like healthcare? I'm a voracious consumer of information, and I'm impatient. I don't like to be spun. Do you know if there are active terror cells in the United States right now? To be moderator of Face the Nation means bringing the most powerful stakeholders to the table to become better informed.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
While America's relaxing policies around social media and the internet, Germany is cracking down on lies and vitriol online.
How do people react when you take their phones from them?
They are shocked.
Which approach makes more sense? Plus, Timothy Chalamet only on 60 Minutes.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go with the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes.
Like a John Grisham novel come to life.
Real lives.
He pointed a gun to me and said, "This is the day you die." And he shot me.
Real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
I'm an innocent man, and I hope the whole world can see it now.
Catch the latest episodes. Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
The all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This is CBS.
In the early morning hours of Tuesday, September 2nd, 2003, Lynette Vandershoot found her daughter's bedroom empty and her truck gone from their driveway.
This was so uncharacteristic of their daughter, so different from any behaviors in the past.
She has no money, no ATM, no credit card, no identification on her at all.
Justine's family frantically turned to the community for help.
I just want her home.
The Vandershoots, passionate, and they got organized.
This is my sister. She's been missing since Tuesday.
We went through all of Auburn, hanging the missing poster flyers, tying the pink ribbons around, because pink was her favorite color. Justine, we love you. We're all out looking for you. Please call us and let us know you're okay.
Pretty soon, everyone was looking for Justine.
Was Danny assisting in any of these search efforts in the beginning?
Danny showed up a number of times, and he would wear the T-shirts. He seemed really concerned.
She's been gone for 3 days now, and concern is growing.
The first break in the case came when Justine's truck was located at a park and ride about 5 miles from the Vandershoot home.
It was parked right here in this parking space.
And once we had that, then our belief was that, she was not far.
Matt Scribner was out riding his horse when he saw searchers gathered at the park and ride. Like many in the area, he had seen reports of Justine's disappearance.
I thought, well, they might be searching this area because at the time there was a direct access from the park and ride to this area.
A week earlier, he had seen a freshly dug hole along the trail, but as he rode through again this time.
Did you notice anything different?
The hole was not there anymore. There was debris over the top of it.
But the significance of that would not become clear until later.
I wasn't thinking like
Nobody
that.
thinks like that.
As the search continued, Placer County District Attorney Morgan Geyer says investigators considered the possibility that Justine had left the state.
The park and ride is located on a very busy interstate, Interstate 80, that runs the length of our country. We have a car that is locked and looks as if it was left intentionally. Did she meet someone there and jump on the freeway?
Danny had told detectives early on about the Navy man Justine had met in Florida.
Danny was actually one of the first people to say, well, maybe she's off in Florida because there's some guy she likes in Florida.
You have to assume everything's possible. Our detectives made contact with the Naval Intelligence Service. They tracked him down right away. Boom.
They did an extensive interview with him, and it was determined that he didn't have anything to do with her disappearance.
Danny, however, kept throwing that out there.
Danny told the media about a strange call he had received.
There's been an inquiry to my credit in Florida. Someone tried to get a credit card there, and I'm really hoping it's Justine.
They call tonight's vigil the Vigil of Hope.
Her loved ones clung to the hope that she was still alive and thought she was possibly being held against her will.
It's you guys that keep us going, all the support.
We're all gonna bring her home. We're gonna find her. She's gonna get away. She's a fighter.
Meanwhile, Danny appeared to be the distraught boyfriend on the local news.
2.5 years of my life have been devoted to that girl, and now that part of my life is gone.
Holding a photo of Justine and an engagement ring appraisal, he made his own plea.
She means more to me and our family than she does to you. And whoever it is needs to just let her go and let her come home.
But suspicion was growing around Danny, and friends were coming forward about his toxic relationship with Justine.
Danny's possessive. He's jealous. He's angry. He believes Justine is cheating on him. He's angrier. And all those things began to roll.
Detectives also began looking deeper into his relationship with Brandon.
As we interviewed more and more people, I find these guys were together. Generally what they did together.
By most accounts, Danny sort of looked up to Brandon. Brandon was known to be smart, somewhat cunning. He sort of had an edge to him.
They had some things in common, like juvenile brushes with the law.
Danny Bessemer had a history of thefts, burglaries, possession of stolen property. Brandon Fernandez had been prosecuted for essentially computer hacking.
For somebody who was a total geek, he was very, very confident in himself. Danny was more of a follower.
And detectives learned they shared a disturbing fixation with murder.
They talked about killing people. They talked about disposing the bodies, beating polygraphs, well before the disappearance of Justine Vandershoot.
He had told me there's a couple spots where if I ever wanted to kill you, nobody would ever find you. This was something he had just said as a joke.
Brandon had created a website ranking levels of violence.
He had pictures of people dead, dying.
Things that give you chills up the back of your neck.
One of the levels discussed thinking about committing some form of violence, but not doing it. Another level talked about committing the violence contemplated on an animal. I mean, that's not normal behavior for a young man.
It is not normal behavior, and it is certainly consistent with those who find value and thrill in killing other human beings.
Investigators questioned Danny and Brandon throughout the investigation. Both of them said they had spent the evening alone together in their apartment.
The fact that each boy was the other's alibi is a red flag.
And that wasn't the only red flag. As detectives retraced Justine's last steps, they knew her cell phone shut off in the area where her truck was found. But then they found something very interesting.
They got the last 2 incoming phone calls to her on the night she was murdered. They were both from Brandon Fernandez.
Here comes a big one.
What I've seen, it's like chaos.
This is the pager that Hezbollah was using.
How was this possible?
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Whoa.
Wow.
Ask me the hard-hitting questions.
I'm open to all of it.
60 minutes. Is this what you want?
60 minutes.
60 minutes!
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
Go to the ends of the earth.
We'll hit the heights.
A great adventure together.
And reach for the stars.
Star power. I like it.
So cool.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Something that's undeniable.
With mindfulness.
Innovative.
Magical.
It's like being a child.
And truly original reporting.
God, you do your research.
I tell a good story.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
No matter how you start your day, one thing is clear.
Actually, 2 things. Pretty sure it's 3.
Guys, whether it's news, money, health, or wellness, sports, movies, or even inspiration.
Clearly, CBS Mornings is the place to be. That's like 7 things.
Okay, clearly, I'm bad at math, always been.
Clearly.
Okay. Clearly, CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7 on CBS.
What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
Anyone that doesn't agree women should be in the submarine force has to ask themselves why they would think about that.
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
Life is a little bit different now.
It's gonna take a while to get used to. And I say it to myself that I can't make this about me.
When we put people before politics.
What would happen if it was harder for Mexican residents to come over to work in Presidio?
I think we'd be in serious trouble.
Are you okay, ma'am?
What happens when you experience the story?
I'm shocked at how devastated this neighborhood is. How bad is it in your house?
Look at it.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
Here in Chicago.
Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
As the search for Justine Vandershoot entered its 3rd week,
Day 15 that Justine Vandershoot has been missing.
There was no sign of the missing teen, alive or dead.
We had no body. We didn't have a lot.
Sheriff's detectives decided to up the ante. They enlisted the help of the FBI to interview Danny and Brandon again.
We needed to separate them, number one, but to have one role on the other.
On September 17th, 2003, detectives questioned Danny Bessemer at Sheriff's headquarters.
Tell me why you didn't do it, because I was sleeping.
The same afternoon, Detective Angela Ford and FBI agent Jeff Reineck and his partner drove Brandon Fernandez from his job to the FBI building in Sacramento.
Did he seem nervous? I mean, when the FBI shows up at your job and wants to talk to you.
He didn't seem nervous. He seemed like he had nothing to hide.
Brandon told the agents he had jet skied all day with coworkers, and after going home, he went out to run an errand because he wasn't feeling well.
I went down to get a V8 juice. I had the flu at this point.
He said he got pulled over for running a stop sign and accidentally called Justine twice.
Justine's cell phone was right next to my girlfriend's number.
He said he returned home and went to bed. Brandon said Danny had also been home after having dinner with the Vandershoots, but the agents were about to catch Brandon in a big lie.
Danny and Brandon first said, no, we were by ourselves. Well, no, it turns out that they weren't.
Sheriff's detectives had received a tip from Brandon's cousin, Clayton Cole. He told them that he and a friend had stayed at Brandon and Danny's place the night Justine went missing and saw them leave.
They knew that Danny and Brandon didn't come back until much later.
We're gonna play something to you.
What is this?
What Brandon didn't know is that the investigators had a recorded phone call.
After receiving that tip, detectives had asked Clayton to call Brandon and recorded the conversation.
I talked to my dad about this whole Justine thing, and I had to go to the cops today.
On the call, Brandon repeatedly told Clayton to lie to police and to say that Clayton and his friend weren't there that night.
And at that point, he knew we had a lot more information.
With Brandon now rattled, Agent Reineck asked a key question.
Have you ever seen anyone die? Brandon.
Yes.
He went white.
Brandon broke and admitted he knew where Justine was. But first he said he needed protection from Danny.
Can you take me somewhere safe? Can you bring my girlfriend somewhere safe?
He wants to tell you a little bit more, but he's pointing it towards Danny.
It's all towards Danny. I had nothing to do with it.
He's scary intelligent. He has built everything in lies. He is a great actor. He's a monster.
Sorry, quick. How long was it planned to hurt Justine?
Long. He had planned it forever, almost.
Brandon told them he knew Danny had tapped Justine's phone to catch her cheating and confront her.
I didn't know what was going to happen that night.
But Brandon insisted he had no idea Danny would seek revenge that night. He says as far as he knew, they were just going to meet up with Justine to steal marijuana plants from a farm. He now said those calls to Justine's phone were him trying to get hold of Danny to back out.
And Danny said, no, man, you need to come up here.
Brandon said he met up with Danny and Justine at the park and ride around midnight, and they got in his car with Danny giving directions. When he parked, he said Danny wanted to talk to Justine alone. So he walked away for a bit.
I went down this hill, and I was looking around, and I figured, oh, he's still up there for a while.
After a few minutes, he says he heard the car horn, followed by a scream. He hurried back to find Danny had strangled Justine, his hands still around her neck, and a taser next to her lifeless body.
He looked at me, and he just was psycho. His eyes were just bulging out, and he was laughing. He was saying, I win, I win.
Brandon said those words were in reference to a song called The Game.
Do you think that we could play another game?
That Danny had playing on a loop in Brandon's car, a soundtrack to her murder.
The lyrics detail a girlfriend's infidelity and her ultimate murder by her boyfriend. And interspersed with that song are vignettes of Justine's own words as she's talking either to another boy or about another boy.
And some of the lyrics just excruciating. You always wanted people to remember you. Don't you know your wish is coming true today? Another victim dies tonight. The fear that she must have faced.
I can only imagine if you saw it in a movie, you probably wouldn't believe it.
Even though Brandon had initially said Justine was dead when he made it back up the hill, his story began to evolve.
What he was doing was slowly putting himself at the scene of the death.
Did you hear her exhale? Yes. It was like a really screwed up breath. It like kept happening.
According to Brandon, she was still alive at that point. And also according to Brandon, she was already dead at that point. His own statements internally are inconsistent and demonstrate where he's trying to lie to get out of this.
Brandon said Danny removed her clothing and put her in a grave they dug that night and poured a liquid over her to decompose the body. He says he prayed for it to end.
I said, please just go.
You wanted her to die so it'd be over.
I thought she might have still been alive, but she was going to do something more brutal than she was.
He's watching her die.
And he's not helping her.
He's not helping her, no.
But Brandon said he was scared Danny would kill him, too.
He made me bury her, and he made me promise and say that I was his brother, that I would never say anything. And he said he would kill himself or others. And then he had mentioned my girlfriend and Justine's family. He said he was going to take them out next.
After a 4.5-hour interview, Brandon agreed to take them to the scene.
It was about 9:30 at night.
So dark, walking through this, I can only imagine.
When we first pulled up to come here, there was something shiny on the ground. It was a piece of her jewelry. It was 2 little cherries put together.
A few yards away, in a clearing among the trees, her grave lay hidden under an old mattress.
Danny? Yes. I'm Sergeant McConnell. I want to show this to you.
It wasn't long before detectives informed Danny, who said very little during his 6-hour interrogation, that they'd found the gravesite.
I just got back from there. Guess who took us there? And guess who he's blaming for the whole thing?
The next morning, a team of investigators digging through the hard clay dirt unearthed Justine Vandershoot's remains.
There's a relief, and then there's pain.
Danny and Brandon were both arrested and charged with Justine's murder. After 2.5 weeks, the search was finally over. But justice would prove elusive.
What happens when the world's best journalists come together?
This was an entire building. It will take years to rebuild.
We're from CBS News, American television.
You get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
No matter how you start your day, one thing is clear.
CBS Mornings is the best way to start your day.
I can see clearly now.
My morning routine.
The first thing I do when I wake up is turn off the alarm.
I try to remember where I put my phone down.
One alarm goes off at 4 a.m.
I need not 1, not 2, but...
And I'm out the door at 4:15.
3 snoozes to get out of bed fully coherent.
How much detail are you looking for?
I love a bath full of bubbles. The more bubbles, the better.
I'm very quick with the actual coffee, shave, shower, dressed out the door, but all around that is just pure chaos. For example, this morning, these are dirty socks.
You want my honest answer? Am I a morning person? I gotta be honest. I wish morning started at like 10 a.m. Can I say that? Clearly.
It's a bright, bright, bright way to start your day. CBS Mornings weekdays at 7 on CBS.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
What happens when we follow the human side of the headline?
I was in tears.
Life is a little bit different now.
It's gonna take a while to get used to. And I said it to myself that I can't make this about me.
You get the all-new CBS Evening News.
I drove home and I see the chaplain and I see detectives. My mom's crying and my dad said, "Your sister's not coming home." I passed out, literally.
And it's still hard to relive that moment.
Yeah.
On September 18th, 2003, Justine's family shared their heartbreak with the community.
I almost sensed Lynette just crumbling. And I put my hand on her shoulder. I just kind of propped her up. And we announced that this family's worst fears had come true.
Danny Bessemer and his roommate, Brandon Fernandez, were arrested Wednesday.
If the two gentlemen that are in custody now are responsible for this, they need to burn in hell.
Detectives interviewed Danny Bessemer again and told him they needed information about Brandon Fernandez's role in the murder.
Just talk about Brandon, don't talk about Danny.
Believing Brandon has a deal with the FBI, Danny tried to haggle.
How can I get the same where Brandon's at right now? Listen, I don't have the authority to let's make a deal, okay?
Ultimately, he broke down and started talking.
I really want to tell you everything I do.
Danny admitted he had started to strangle Justine, but then...
She said 4 words that just changed my mind. Those words were, "Danny, I love you."
But he said Brandon was the one who encouraged him to keep going.
He tells me it's too late now. It's already attempted murder.
Danny admitted he had poured drain cleaner over Justine's body, but said Brandon had poured it down her throat.
There was a black tarry substance on top of her. And then after the autopsy, there was a black tarry substance inside of her lungs.
Justine's official cause of death was listed as homicidal violence, but further testing suggested she had also ingested dirt.
There is no other way. To be that far down and into the bronchial canals means she inhaled it. She was alive.
Taking into consideration the family's wishes to avoid a painful, prolonged trial, prosecutors at the time offered a plea deal. As a condition of his plea agreement, Danny spoke with detectives again and gave new details about Brandon's role.
What was the story he started to tell?
Danny tells a story ultimately that involves Brandon as the mastermind. Brandon is claiming he is merely a victim of circumstance, and he panicked and participated in the cleanup and the getaway.
So we know the truth lies somewhere in the middle.
It really does. And Brandon does a pretty good job of incriminating Danny, and Danny does a pretty good job of incriminating Brandon.
In 2005, Danny Bessemer pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in exchange for a sentence of 25 years to life. Brandon Fernandez pleaded to second-degree murder and received 15 years to life.
A piece of justice was served. At least we can put some of this behind us.
Part of their plan was to receive a life sentence that allowed them to at least become eligible for parole and maybe have a chance someday.
Justine's family made it their mission to ensure that would never happen. Brandon Fernandez came up for parole in 2017 and was denied.
Every time they get denied, that's justice for her.
The family breathed a sigh of relief, but their lives would soon be upended once again.
In 2018, California changed the law of murder. In 2020, Brandon Fernandez filed a petition to get out of his murder conviction based on the new law.
The new law reduced the fault of defendants who didn't actually do the killing, like a getaway driver. Brandon wanted to have his life sentence for second-degree murder thrown out and to be resentenced as an accessory after the fact.
He still has not taken any responsibility. He's guilty just as much as Danny.
Brandon's defense attorney, Steve DeFilippis, maintains his client was only guilty of being taken in by Danny's schemes.
Clearly, Brandon was in the wrong. He shouldn't have participated in the cover-up of this, and that's what he did. And absolutely, he should be convicted of that, but shouldn't be held responsible for a murder.
A judge presiding over the resentencing case in 2020 denied Brandon's motion, but that ruling was reversed by the Court of Appeals and sent back due to yet another shift in the legal standard. Both sides would now have to fight it out in court in an evidentiary hearing.
We had to call all of the witnesses and we had to prove Mr. Fernandez's guilt.
The district attorney has to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, and the judge has to make findings beyond a reasonable doubt.
In May 2024, it would be up to Deputy DA Tim Wirtz to prove that Brandon Fernandez helped plan and carry out Justine's murder.
Once they started kicking this idea around, they built off each other.
His key witness was Danny Bessemer, who over several days testified how he and Brandon Fernandez were two pillars in the plot to lure Justine to her death.
Danny talks about how he doesn't want to let Brandon down when they're out there digging the grave, and Brandon says, "This better not be for nothing."
Danny described how he and Brandon assumed different responsibilities.
Danny was going to kill her, and Brandon was going to be involved in the cover-up side of things, the forensics, as he described it. Brandon purchased the chemicals that were poured over Justine.
According to Danny, he and Brandon pre-dug the grave over several days.
The last time they go to the grave before they bring Justine there is that Mondays during the day to check it out in the light and possibly do some digging.
And Danny says Brandon provided the tools used to dig, including a pickaxe he took from his parents' house.
After they kill Justine and bury her, they throw them over the fence at Brandon's parents' house. And the police go and corroborate that.
The prosecution says it found other evidence at Brandon's workplace that he never mentioned, like pieces of the recording device used to tap Justine's phone. And in his shredder, a receipt for a brand new set of tires.
He was already covering his tracks the day after.
What we call in the prosecution world, consciousness of guilt.
Brandon's defense attorney insists Brandon was only trying to hide his role in the cover-up, not the murder. And he says that relying on Danny Bessemer's testimony is a sign of the prosecution's desperation.
They don't have a case.
CBS Mornings is clearly fun.
Money saving. Dollar Jill's here to tell us what it means for you.
Clearly delish.
So what's on the menu today?
Clearly, CBS Mornings weekdays at 7 on CBS.
What happens when the world's best journalists come together?
Write a prescription for the healing of America.
We're retired and this is our paradise.
No, it's going.
You get the stories of America every night. You get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This is CBS.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth.
We'll hit the heights.
And reach for the stars.
Star power. I like it.
Ta-da!
I want to be part of this.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
You've probably heard of the NCIS from the hit TV series, but we're about to take you inside its real-life work. Listen to 48 Hours NCIS early and ad-free on the 48 Hours Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts.
Okay, let's go.
You guys good?
Start at the beginning.
All right, we good?
Keep going. The clock, it's ticking.
Off we go.
60 minutes. Is this what you want?
60 minutes.
60 minutes!
It's time for 60 Minutes. Sundays on CBS.
I often wonder, will I ever get 100% of the truth? I don't think we ever will.
You think he's still a danger?
Yes, definitely.
Brandon's defense attorney, Steve DeFilippis, says Danny Bessemer is the real danger and points out it was Danny who broke bread with Justine's family, knowing he was going to kill her that night.
This is Ted Bundy in the making. Somebody who has no conscience, somebody who has no empathy for other people, basically a psychopath.
And he argues Danny will say anything in court to improve his chances of being paroled.
He wants everything to look like Brandon made him do this. He's at that point told either 4 or 5 different stories about what happened.
In his cross-examination, DeFilippis picks apart inconsistencies in Danny's statements about Brandon's involvement.
You can't corroborate any of his story, and that's deliberately done by him because he knows that it can't be refuted.
In fact, he argues that the evidence contradicts Danny's story. For one thing, he says if Brandon was really in charge of forensics, he wouldn't leave a trail of evidence.
The guy who is in charge of forensics is not going to do any of the things that Brandon did. Brandon takes the shovel and leaves it at his parents' home. Why would you put something involved in the homicide at your parents' home? Why would you drive your car up to the scene knowing that you're going to leave tire tracks on the dirt? You wouldn't do that.
And another discrepancy, Danny's claim that he and Brandon poured drain cleaner on Justine doesn't match the autopsy findings. Instead, those results indicate she ingested methanol, a toxic chemical compound found in a variety of products, but not drain cleaners. But Tim Wirtz counters that Danny has no reason to lie about that.
I don't know what theory under which the parole board might look favorably upon Drano, but unfavorably upon methanol being poured on her. The only explanation is that he's honestly mistaken, and the only way he'd be mistaken is if he wasn't the one that bought it.
And DeFilippis says Brandon has an alibi for that Monday afternoon before the murder, when Danny claims they went to the gravesite.
We know that Brandon was up at the lake that day.
Wirtz points out there was a 2-hour window when Brandon left to pick up tools to fix a broken jet ski.
It's just not an alibi. There's plenty of time for him to have done what he said.
DeFilippis says the timing still doesn't match up with Danny's story.
Danny also said that the digging was later in the day. It was not in the morning time, which is when Brandon got the tools and went back.
But the prosecution argues that the defense can't get around Matt Scribner's testimony that he saw a freshly dug hole 3 days prior to the murder, which is consistent with Danny's account of digging the grave over several days.
This wasn't a panicked dig that they did at the last minute where Brandon's terrified for his life. The way it actually pans out, Brandon is given immense power. Brandon knows where the body is.
After more than 2 weeks of testimony, the judge gets the case. If Brandon's motion is granted, he will walk free. It's a familiar fear for the Vandershoots.
The hand shaking, just trying to get ready,
Absolutely.
just brings the emotions up all over again.
You don't know what to expect.
On August 1st, 2024, before a courtroom packed with the Vandershoots and their supporters, as well as Brandon Fernandez, who appeared via video conference, and his parents, the judge issued his ruling.
Was there a palpable concern for the Vandershoots that one of their daughter's murders could go free?
That fear, that concern, you could cut it with a knife.
Cameras were allowed in court, but we were not allowed to record audio. The judge denied Brandon Fernandez's motion and upheld his conviction.
So I was very nervous. I let out a big sigh as soon as he said it, so it was just, yay, feels really good. Some justice.
Justice for Justine again. He did not get out. Very relieved.
The judge said it was difficult to parse the truth from lies told by both Danny and Brandon. But he says ultimately it was evident Brandon was in on the murder plot and easily led investigators to Justine's body through rugged terrain in the dark.
Brandon brought you here and pinpointed exactly. I mean, he knew exactly where it was.
He did. He gave us instructions and even said you wouldn't find it on your own.
The ruling is a big win for the Vandershoots, but only temporary relief.
In 2 years, we've got 2 more parole hearings coming up.
We're not going away. We're never giving up.
I'll be there with my cane. I think this one right here is my favorite.
They're critical of evolving laws that have allowed Brandon Fernandez to keep relitigating his role in Justine's murder.
I kind of feel at times we've been on pause. We really haven't been able to move forward because we have to relive it.
In issuing his ruling, the judge acknowledged that the legal system can seem unfair to the victims' families and to survivors.
I wholeheartedly agree. Oftentimes it feels as if the only rights we are trying to respect are those of the convicted and the guilty and not grieving family members. That underlies the problems with this law because it decreases people's faith in the system, that there's finality.
It's something the Vandershoots are trying to change by advocating for victims' rights.
We're trying to do everything we can to prevent this happening to somebody else's family.
They also partnered with the Placer County DA to sponsor new state legislation. Justine's Law, as it's called, passed in 2023 and provides teen dating violence prevention education in high schools throughout California.
What do you want Justine's legacy to be now?
To help educate other boys and girls, even if it saves one life, it's worth everything.
Matt Scribner says he can't ride through these trails without thinking of Justine.
In one aspect, it's quiet. They've cleaned the area up. It's beautiful.
In some ways, it's almost like Justine is shining here.
I believe that.
We think of her as hummingbirds come to us. A lot of times when we're back here working in their garden, I'll have a little hummingbird. She'll come right up to my face and I'll talk to her, and I think of her as she's saying hi to me.
You've probably heard of the NCIS from the hit TV series, but we're about to take you inside its real-life work. Listen to 48 Hours NCIS early and ad-free on the 48 Hours Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts.
What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
Anyone that doesn't agree women should be in the submarine force has to ask themselves why they would think about that.
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
Life is a little bit different now.
It's gonna take a while to get used to. And I say it to myself that I can't make this about me.
When we put people before politics.
What would happen if it was harder for Mexican residents to come over to work in Presidio?
I think we'd be in serious trouble.
Are you okay, ma'am?
What happens when you experience the story?
I'm shocked at how devastated this neighborhood is. How bad is it in your house?
Look at it.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
Here in Chicago.
Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
Ready?
Yeah.
Ready? And 1, 2, 3. Hey!
I can see clearly now.
Look at this outfit. Amazing. Give me some love, baby.
We got a toy. Look at this.
Oh, no! Time for another quick meal you can make any night of the week.
We've got tips to save on clothes, tech,
and more.
How I got here is nothing short of like a miracle.
talent.
Talent.
It's a bright, bright, bright way to start your day.
See you
on CBS Mornings.
Here comes a big one.
What I've seen, it's like chaos.
This is the pager that Hezbollah was using.
How was this possible?
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Whoa.
Wow.
Ask me the hard-hitting questions. I'm open to all of it.
60 minutes. Is this what you want?
60 minutes.
60 minutes!
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
48 Hours reports.
911, where's your emergency?
She disappeared off the face of the earth. Stream 48 Hours, 24/7.
Brian Brimminger was a typical Marine, that kind of an all-American kind of persona. He was assigned to a color guard in Washington, D.C. There's pictures of him in the White House with President George W. Bush. From the outside looking in, it seemed like Brian Brimminger had everything going for him. In 2011, after having served 7 years in the Marine Corps, Brian Brimminger leaves the Marines. He decides to go to Panama. And his plan is to decompress, take some time off.
My sister was deeply in love with the man named Brian Brimminger. All she wanted was to be with him and love him.
They were so madly in love. I think she was very proud of him because he was a Marine.
She used to say things like, "I'm with a Marine." Yvonne went down to Panama with Brian to start a new life. That's where Yvonne wanted to be. It was perfect. I am Michelle Valenzuela, and my sister is Yvonne Baldelli. She likes to karaoke. She likes to dance.
Did Yvonne like it here?
She love it here. Just love it here. Places with cheap beers and happy hour. It's beautiful. She's got the water right in front of her house.
Where are we right now?
Okay, we're on Isla Carenero in Bocas del Toro. This is the house that they were renting in, Brian Brimminger and Yvonne Baldelli. Yvonne told her family members that everything was good. She painted a very happy picture. Through emails, she made it seem like everything was fine and well. The reality of it was that her and Brimminger were fighting constantly.
After I'd heard stories of the fights, I could understand why she would want to leave.
She fell off the radar screen. She just went away one day. Her emails stopped, her communication stopped. Everybody lost contact with her. There's no immigration records that indicates that she left Panama.
There's no book for this. There's no book for dummies on what to do when your sister has gone missing.
Carenero from the outside appears to be a tropical paradise, but it's a swampy hell.
I call it Devil's Island because some terrible things took place on that island.
Brian Brimminger has done nothing, zero, to help with the search for Yvonne.
We are in Central America, in some jungle, in some swamp, looking for Yvonne.
That through the middle is really deep.
This is unbelievable.
What no one knew is that Brian Brimminger had a secret. He was living a double life.
Brian Brimminger moved to California, hooked up with Kristen Werkhoven, and they got married. Kristen worked at the White House, and that's where she and Brian met.
And his life is going on like normal, and our life will never be the same.
What did you do to her, Brian?
We knew that there had been foul play. We knew he was the last one to see her alive.
Brian's coming out with his golf clubs. Let's go, guys.
And this is what I know.
Okay, you rolling? Let's go.
My sister went down to Panama with Brian. Brian returned and my sister didn't.
Brian Brimminger was exceptionally arrogant. But what he didn't account for was this family's fervor to find what happened to their daughter and their sister.
Brian, Peter Van Sant with CBS News. We'd like to ask a couple questions.
It's an easy thing to tell the truth. He told a lot of lies. That's what led to his demise.
I'm Peter Van Sant. Tonight on 48 Hours, Devil's Island.
think I asked direct questions. I don't know that they're tough questions per se.
When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives?
So you would encourage Democrats to work with Donald Trump on an issue like health care. That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand. That means a civil conversation with perspective.
Sunday morning, Wicked Oscar nominee Cynthia Erivo. A few words from Flo, plus 100 years of The New Yorker. Listen for the trumpet.
It was almost like being face to face with the devil.
Women riding bicycles dismembered.
She just vanished.
48 hours reports.
I fought and fought.
911, what is your emergency?
She disappeared off the face of the earth.
Ever think in your wildest dreams someone might want to kill you?
This almost became a game of psychological warfare.
You're caught. You're gonna go down.
Stream 48 hours, 24/7.
CBS Sunday night.
Here we go.
The ultimate tradition continues.
From what I've seen, it's like chaos.
America's longest-running news magazine show is back.
For 60 minutes!
60 minutes.
With a new season.
Hey, let's go.
You're willing to talk about anything. I'm open to all of it. Ask me the hard-hitting questions. So how do you get over the nerves?
Honestly, it's a whole bunch of mind
The most influential people.
Who's the best coach in college football?
Let me see a mirror so I can look at it.
Are you a billionaire yet?
None of your business, man. You trying to get me robbed?
Investigative journalism.
Am I getting a real look at what life is like in here today? Absolutely not.
Do you think people visiting know that these were looted?
When stories threaten our way of life, 60 Minutes demands answers.
This is the pager that Hezbollah was using.
Do you have hope that you may find him yet?
They were asking me to do something that was illegal.
They're fighting for faulty parts?
Yeah. What is the most important takeaway for our audience?
How big of a problem is doping?
Where was the military?
Why are people suspicious?
That sounds like a problem.
How is this possible?
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Whoa.
Wow.
What is going on?
I'm Scott Pelley.
I'm John Worth.
I'm Leslie Stahl.
I'm Bill Whitaker.
I'm Sharon Alfonsi.
I'm Cecilia Vega.
I'm Anderson Cooper.
This is 60 Minutes.
The CBS News original.
Showtime, baby.
It's time for 60 Minutes Sunday on CBS. Don't miss a minute. Now streaming. What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
I'm not asking that we ignore disability, rather that we do not ignore ability.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
In the spring of 2012, Brian Breminger was living the high life in Southern California. Just months removed from a decorated Marine Corps career, Breminger was happily married and living in the suburbs.
When I look at the pictures of Brian and Kristen, I just see a couple in love and super sincerely happy and just enjoying the day at the beach in La Jolla.
These joyful newlywed photos of Brian and Kristen Breminger were a shock to Yvonne Baldelli's family. They expected her to be in the picture.
It wasn't their wedding day, but they came in their wedding attire in a limousine and champagne flowing.
Photographer Jack English had no idea of the intrigue behind these happy images, that Brian had proposed to Kristen just days after Yvonne disappeared in Panama.
She looked very happy, very in love, as if she found her Prince Charming.
Prince Charming? A man who had just left Yvonne Baldelli in Panama 2 weeks earlier? How could this happen? We traveled to the remote islands off the Caribbean coast of Panama to find out. Up ahead is the island of Caranero, where Yvonne and Brian, who the locals called Brim, came to live in September 2011. It's a place where they could chase their dream.
Why did they decide to go to Panama?
She liked the fact that they could live on the beach, you know, pretty reasonably priced down there.
Yvonne's sister, Michelle Valenzuela, says Brian wanted to become a singer, performing in bars and clubs. With her beloved dog Georgia May in hand, Yvonne brought 2 sewing machines in hopes of starting a clothing business. Stepmother Lillian Faust.
She was going to make bathing suits and sell them to tourists. I knew she was excited, and she didn't have any reservations.
It sounded like she had a real plan for the future.
She did, and she thought that she found her paradise, her perfect place.
Michelle recalls how her younger sister Yvonne, recently divorced, was smitten with Brian when they first started dating in 2009 in Southern California.
I didn't think she was physically attracted to him. That was a big part of it.
And while Yvonne seemed to be falling in love with Brian, big sister Michelle wasn't so sure.
As far as emotionally from my sister, Yvonne would put 100% into you, and she would expect that back. And I didn't get that impression that she was receiving that. That concerned me. She deserved that.
After Yvonne was laid off from her management job with Procter & Gamble and Brian ended his career in the Marines, the two decided to make a fresh start and reinvent themselves in Panama, settling in this house. They quickly fell in with the local expats.
Did you think they were in love?
Apparently. It seems so.
Joan and Stephen Crabtree own the Cosmic Crab, a funky resort and waterfront bar where Brian would sing for his supper.
He played here at the Cosmic Crab a couple of nights a week, and they were frequent visitors here.
They were very nice people.
Penny Tom, owner of another waterfront bar, also let Brian play for food and free booze. Lots of booze.
They used to drink a lot, so they were always happy.
What's a lot?
A lot.
And Jim Mertens says Brian's drinking may have gotten in the way of his singing.
He played the guitar good, but when he started to sing, that's when it went away.
What was it like?
Like a hound dog on a porch.
She looked very happy in the pictures, and she was really enjoying herself there, and I knew it would be a place that she would like.
For Yvonne's father, Jim Faust, the constant stream of joyful phone calls and emails describing the couple's Panama adventures was reassuring.
Yvonne's emails were stories of exactly what her life was like down there, and I could picture it, and I could close my eyes, and it was like I was there. I couldn't imagine the whole thing.
Emails like this one.
She says, "Hi, sis. Brian, already working at local restaurants and bars. We love it. We wake up and go running, then swim in the ocean every morning."
And so, Yvonne's family thought all was well in paradise, and that Brian might be the one for Yvonne.
I believed that they were going to get married. That's what I thought was going to happen when they got down there.
But then, right around Thanksgiving 2011, 3 months after they arrived in Panama, the happy emails and calls from Yvonne started to drop off. For Michelle, a sisterly instinct started to kick in.
That's what set me off, was the fact that they were becoming less frequent, the emails from her, and then they stopped completely.
2 weeks passed. Then, on December 14th, Michelle finally got a text. But it wasn't from Yvonne.
There was a number I didn't recognize, and a text message on there said, "This is Brian, may I make arrangements to pick up my truck?"
Michelle was shocked. Brian was back in the U.S.?
I sat up, called that number. For only thing out of my mouth was, "Where's my sister?" He says, "Didn't you get my email?" I said, "I haven't received any emails from anybody. It's been a few weeks." I said, "I'll call you back." So I went to my computer.
Michelle discovered an email she had overlooked. It was from Brian, who had never written before.
The one from him stated, "I'm sure you've heard by now that Vonnie and I are no longer together." I called him right back. So I asked him point blank, "What happened?" And he said they had got in a fight because she had found out that he had a child from somebody else.
That somebody else, Kristen Workhoven. The two had a baby girl in 2010. Since Yvonne was unable to have a child because of a medical condition, the discovery must have been earth-shattering. Brian then said Yvonne just up and left.
I said, "Did she leave a note?" "No." "Has she tried to call you since?" "No." "Do you know where she's at?" "No." And I said, I haven't heard from her, Brian. And he said, well, I'm sure she's fine.
But Michelle had her doubts about that story. And 10 days later, when Brian called and still wanted to pick up his truck, Michelle said she had another plan.
I said, when you come to pick up the truck, I'll be here, that's no problem. And I think it's a good idea that you go with me to the police department, since you're the last one to see her and we can fill out a missing persons report. Because now we're already the mid-December and I haven't heard anything from her, and that's not right. Something's wrong.
Can see clearly now. Clearly, CBS Mornings.
Weekdays on CBS.
Yeah!
Tony, coming?
No, I'm gonna stick around for an hour.
CBS Mornings Plus with Adriana Diaz and Tony DeCopel, right after CBS Mornings.
It's just like mornings.
Plus fun.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day.
Politics isn't a game. When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives? Politics is about policy. So you would encourage Democrats to work with Donald Trump on an issue like healthcare?
I'm a voracious consumer of information, and I'm impatient. I don't like to be spun.
Do you know if there are active terror cells in the United States right now?
To be moderator of Face the Nation means bringing the most powerful stakeholders to the table to become better informed.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
While America's relaxing policies around social media and the internet, Germany is cracking down on lies and vitriol online.
How do people react when you take their phones from them?
They are shocked. Which approach makes more sense? Plus, Timothy Chalamet only on 60 Minutes.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go with the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes.
Like a John Grisham novel come to life.
Real lives.
He pointed a gun to me and said, "This is the day you die." And he shot me.
Real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
I'm an innocent man, and I hope the whole world can see it now.
Catch the latest episodes. Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
The all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This is CBS.
In December of 2011, Michelle Valenzuela was still worried about her missing sister. So she went back to her computer, where she found another overlooked message. This one from Yvonne.
Hi, sis, just an update. Brian and I are no longer together. I should have trusted my instincts that he is a lying, cheating ass. I'm headed to Costa Rica with a man I met when we first got to Bocas.
What'd you think when you read this email?
I just wasn't sure. There's some things in there that didn't feel right to me.
Her head was spinning. Could Yvonne really have run off with another man after learning that Brian had a love child?
All Yvonne ever wanted to do was be a mother. That's all she ever wanted to do was be a mother. And to find out that Brian had a child, and she sold everything she had to go to the other ends of the world to be with his man, and he didn't tell her about that. I'm questioning what her mental state is right now. She's heartbroken.
In upstate New York, Jim and Lillian Faust also felt the turn of events was just so out of character for their daughter.
For her life to change so abruptly, and she's like, oh, well, I'm going with this guy, and
To Costa Rica.
Costa Rica, that made absolutely, positively no sense to me.
Also making no sense, 3 weeks had passed since Yvonne had emailed from Panama, but then out of the blue, she sent a new email. It was strange.
Miss you and everyone at home. I'm starting to get a little homesick. I'm working on plans to get home as early as the second week of January. I've been living with cliffhangers for a while. Love you, sis, Yvonne.
While strange, the email was also reassuring for her family, who was happy to learn Yvonne would soon return to California.
So I stopped worrying. I figured, okay, she knows that in January we're having a family get-together. She's going to be there.
Do you feel she's safe at this point?
I was still worried, but I was satisfied with it for the moment.
On the same day that email arrived, so too did Brian Brimminger, knocking on the front door of Michelle's LA home to pick up his truck.
What did you see on his face? What was his demeanor like?
He was just in a hurry. He was calm, but it was very brief.
All business.
Yes.
Get his stuff, get his truck.
And leave.
After Brian got his pickup truck, Yvonne's emails stopped. 16 long days passed until on January 6th, 2012, Michelle wrote her sister. The subject, worried.
I just want to make sure you weren't kidnapped or someone pretending to be you. Ha ha. There's my paranoid, suspicious mind, or maybe too many 48 hours.
Did you ever hear back from your sister again?
No, that's the last email.
Michelle was still hopeful that she would appear at that family reunion, but Yvonne never showed up.
Well, at that point, when we met up with my dad and I told him we haven't heard from her, he said, oh no, something's wrong. Something's wrong. And I told my dad, she did not leave Panama. That's just my feeling.
By now, Michelle was convinced her sister never ran off to Costa Rica with another man. So her instinct was to learn where Yvonne's emails were really coming from.
So I went to my cousin and asked him to please check it out, because like I said, I haven't got a clue.
The cousin, a technology whiz, said tracking Yvonne's emails would be easy. All he needed was their IP addresses. So he searched the emails Yvonne had supposedly sent from Panama and Costa Rica, as well as that email Brian had sent from near Dana Point, California. The cousin made a startling discovery.
The ones from Panama came from Panama. And then the one that was supposed to be with her being in Costa Rica came from the United States.
Where in the United States?
One of them looked like they were coming from Dana Point.
That email, Michelle says, originated from where Brian was now living near Dana Point, California. It was the evidence Michelle had been looking for.
They were sharing the same IP address.
So Yvonne's email is coming from Brian's computer.
Yes.
The family's worst fear had come true. It appeared Brian had hacked into Yvonne's email account and was impersonating her. But why?
That's when I knew that he did something to her. And
it's not missing person, it's murder now.
It's murder.
I said, my sister's dead and I'm never going to see her again.
But Michelle had no time to mourn. Where she met with Special Agent Andrew Masters.
Michelle Valenzuela, she was a Spitfire. When they brought that to us, we knew that there was absolutely foul play involved.
The FBI immediately launched an investigation into Yvonne's disappearance, with Masters taking charge. Yvonne's family then contacted the State Department.
I call the embassy, and the embassy tells us there is no record of her ever leaving Panama and no record of her ever entering Costa Rica.
Yvonne's family couldn't wait any longer. They traveled to Panama to find answers. The FBI made a move as well, targeting Brian Brimminger as a person of interest.
Brian didn't realize what exactly the FBI is capable of.
Here comes a big one. What I've seen, it's like chaos.
This is the pager that Hezbollah was using.
How is this possible?
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Whoa.
Wow.
Ask me the hard-hitting questions. I'm open to all of it.
60 minutes. Is this what you want?
60 minutes.
60 minutes!
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights
What a finish at the final round of play.
and in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
Go to the ends of the earth.
We'll hit the heights.
A great adventure together.
And reach for the stars.
Star power. I like it.
So cool.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Something that's undeniable.
With mindfulness.
innovative,
Magical.
It's like being a child.
and truly original reporting.
God, you do your research.
I tell a good story.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
No matter how you start your day, one thing is clear.
Actually, two things. Pretty sure it's three.
Guys, whether it's news, money, health, or wellness, sports, movies, or even inspiration.
Clearly, CBS Mornings is the place to be.
That's like 7 things.
Okay, clearly, I'm bad at math, always been.
Clearly.
Oh, okay,
Clearly.
okay. Clearly, CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7 on CBS.
What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
Anyone that doesn't agree women should be in the submarine force has to ask themselves why they would think about that.
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
Life is a little bit different now.
It's gonna take a while to get used to. And I say it to myself that I can't make this about me.
When we put people before politics.
What would happen if it was harder for Mexican residents to come over to work in Presidio?
I think we'd be in serious trouble. Are you okay, ma'am?
What happens when you experience the story?
I'm shocked at how devastated this neighborhood is. How bad is it in your house?
Look at it.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
Here in Chicago.
Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
With the FBI investigation underway in the States, Yvonne's family met up with legendary investigator Don Winner in Panama City.
Why is it when something goes bad with an American citizen in Panama, you get the phone call?
I've already put away, or helped to put away, 3 serial killers. So when bad things happen, they know that to come to me when they don't know what else to do.
Winner is an ex-U.S. intelligence officer with an uncanny ability to solve murders. Jim and Lillian tell Dawn the story of their daughter's disappearance and Brian's claim that she's run off with another man.
I think the chances that she's running around in Costa Rica somewhere with some other dude are damn near zero. Here's the deal. This is what happened. This is what we think is going on.
It's not the first time Winner, a CBS News consultant, has worked on a case with 48 Hours.
All right, we're going to go take a look at this yellow trimaran.
The intrepid investigator helped solve the murder of American sailor Don North, as 48 Hours reported in 2011.
Just on a personal side in all of this, can you believe you and I are doing this again?
No, absolutely not. I tell you what, it's amazing.
Winner is convinced Brian Breminger is involved. His strategy, put pressure on the Panamanian government to act.
When Don Winner speaks,
the people listen, yeah.
Winner's game plan also called for Jim and Michelle to give blood for DNA tests should any remains be found. And when Yvonne's family travels hundreds of miles from Panama City to the tropical island where she disappeared,
Yvonne Lee Valdelli.
The Panamanian police are persuaded to hold a press conference to plead for information.
The family has been experiencing a living nightmare for quite a few months, and we continue to appeal to anyone who knows absolutely anything about Yvonne's disappearance to come forward.
Panamanian police announce for the first time that Yvonne is the victim of foul play and name Brian Breminger as the suspect.
Todos adoramos a Yvonne.
This news conference reverberated around the world.
Police say within weeks of her disappearance, Breminger returned to the U.S., got engaged, and married another woman. Tonight, the FBI is calling him a person of interest.
Riding the momentum of the press conference, they printed flyers, fanned out to neighborhoods and the village, searching for their own clues. It's a bittersweet search for Yvonne's niece, Lauren Byer, in a place that is no longer a paradise.
There's nothing here for us until we find her. That's why we're here.
But the family's quest is starting to get results. Witnesses who knew the couple come out of the woodwork, describing Brian's verbal and physical abuse.
To me, he was a scary person. He was not the kind of person I wanted to be around.
Local bar owner Jeff Salzman saw it firsthand on Yvonne's face.
As I recall, it was black eyes and blackness around the face and bruises.
Was she self-conscious about it?
She was trying to hide it and not speak of it.
It was very painful to learn that he had hit her, that she had bruises, that she had black eyes. Those things were very difficult to learn.
The realization that Yvonne may have been murdered is setting in.
Where could Yvonne's body have been dumped? Well, just feet in front of that house, you've got thousands of square miles of water. While if you just go not 20 yards from the shoreline, this impenetrable swamp. Try to find something in there.
But that's exactly what Yvonne's family, investigators, and volunteers set out to do. Entering what could be Yvonne's swampy graveyard.
Describe this area that has to be searched. Just how difficult a place is it?
Okay, it's jungle, it's tropical, so you have every kind of bug and critter that you can think of, spiders and snakes, and, you know, it's not a place to go slogging around through.
Struggling through the muck, the spiders, and the rancid water, the smallest discovery raises hope. A purse, a medicine bottle, a mysterious sinkhole.
I kept asking myself, I want to find Yvonne, but do I want to find Yvonne? I mean, I want to know where she is, but do I want to see her in these swampy areas?
Then they find a passport.
Yeah, we find a U.S. passport, the front page here.
None of it is Yvonne's. But back in the United States, the FBI confronted Brian Breminger.
We went and knocked on his door. He answered and invited us in, said that he was expecting us.
FBI Special Agent Andrew Masters questioned Brian Breminger for more than 4 hours while he babysat his young daughter.
This is Special Agent Andrew Masters along with Special Agent Gabriel Ramirez approaching Apartment M in an attempt to have a consensual monitored interview with Brian Breminger.
We weren't sure if he was going to break down and confess to having a part in her disappearance and murder, or if he was going to become angry, or if he was going to kick us out.
Brian stuck to his story. Yvonne left him for another man.
I come back home and there was a note that said, and I quote, going to Costa Rica with a man I've been talking to, F you ass.
But when confronted with Michelle's email evidence, Brian began to stumble.
Brian, I'm just going to kind of lay it out there, man. The IP addresses are not coming back from Costa Rica or Panama.
Okay.
They're coming back from here. Okay, so.
Here?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if she's not hanging out around here, then somebody sent those emails, right? How did those emails get sent?
Do you know anybody that would have her email account hacked into her account?
No.
Then something caught Master's eye.
As soon as I walk in, I see a white Sony Vaio.
Which is a computer.
A laptop computer, exactly. And we knew that Yvonne owned a white Sony Vaio laptop that she had taken with her to Panama.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking we may very well have Yvonne's computer right here.
Master's hunch was spot on. It was Yvonne's computer. But why was it in Brian's condo? And would it help unravel the mystery of Yvonne's disappearance?
What happens when the world's best journalists come together?
This was an entire building. It will take years to rebuild.
We're from CBS News, American television.
You get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
No matter how you start your day, one thing is clear.
CBS Mornings is the best way to start your day.
I can see clearly now.
My morning routine.
The first thing I do when I wake up is turn off the alarm.
I try to remember where I put my phone down.
One alarm goes off at 4 a.m.
I need not 1, not 2, but...
And I'm out the door at 4:15.
3 snoozes to get out of bed fully coherent.
How much detail are you looking for?
I love a bath full of bubbles. The more bubbles, the better.
I'm very quick with the actual coffee, shave, shower, dressed out the door, but all around that is just pure chaos. For example, this morning, these are dirty socks.
You want my honest answer? Am I a morning person? I gotta be honest. I wish mornings started at like 10 a.m. Can I say that? Clearly.
It's a bright, bright, bright way to start your day. CBS Mornings weekdays at 7 on CBS.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
What happens when we follow the human side of the headline?
I was in tears.
Life is a little bit different now.
It's gonna take a while to get used to. And I said to myself that I can't make this about me.
You get the all-new CBS Evening News.
Even though he was under the FBI's microscope, Brian Bremiger remained a free man, living with his family on the outskirts of San Diego. Kristen worked for a defense contractor, while Brian, unemployed, spent much of his time golfing.
Recognize that man?
Yes, I do. That's Brian.
In the summer of 2012, we showed Yvonne's sister Michelle video of Brian's new life.
What goes through your mind when you see him?
Well, honestly, it's not surprising now that I know what he's capable of. He thinks he got away with murder. So what you have here is a person who killed my sister and can walk away scot-free.
You ready? Brian's coming out with his golf club.
Let's go, guys. Okay, roll.
Just a few months after that FBI interview, we came face to face with the suspected killer.
Brian? Peter Van Sant with CBS News. We'd like to ask a couple questions. Would you please talk to us? Did you murder Yvonne Baldelli? You can speak to us. You can answer that question. Brian, why won't you speak with us? Did you have anything to do with her disappearance?
While Brian heads off to enjoy another carefree day on the greens, the FBI was turning his life upside down, interviewing everyone he knew, including his wife, Kristen.
What had Brian told her about why he was living in Panama?
He told Kristen that he is going down to Panama to decompress from after leaving the Marine Corps, and that he was going with some Marine Corps friends.
Did Kristen urge Brian to leave Yvonne?
No, Kristen didn't even know Yvonne existed.
So he lied to Kristen?
Absolutely.
Apparently, all those lies didn't matter to Kristen.
According to her, Brian is the greatest thing to ever happen to anybody.
But that's something she didn't want to share with us when 48 Hours knocked on her door.
Hi, Kristen. Kristen, I'm Ryan with CBS News. Is there any way we can talk?
Meanwhile, as Special Agent Masters took several investigative trips to Panama, a different portrait of Brian Breminger emerged.
We talked to many people that would socialize with him at bars, and we learned about all the domestic violence that he brought upon her, the choking, the dragging, the berating.
After speaking with friends and neighbors of Yvonne and Brian, Special Agent Masters became certain the couple had a violent fight on November 26, 2011. After Yvonne learned that Brian had fathered a child with Kristen.
The argument probably escalated, and at some point, Brian decided he was done with her and he was going to kill her.
Crucial evidence was also discovered on Yvonne's laptop, the very computer Masters saw when he first questioned Brian. About 2 weeks before her murder, Yvonne took this disturbing selfie.
That photo shows a massive black eye on her left eye and swelling in her left cheek.
In a way, from the grave, Yvonne helped you in this investigation.
Yvonne helped us tell the story, yes. Absolutely.
And there was more chilling evidence.
We found the Yahoo searches in which he searches how to remove blood from a mattress.
When did he do that?
He did that about 10:30 in the morning, the night after Yvonne was murdered.
Masters discovered even more evidence in Costa Rica, where Brian is seen withdrawing cash from Yvonne's account.
We were able to obtain those ATM photos. So we have Brian using Yvonne's debit card to extract money from her account.
And Masters says there is no doubt that Brian used Yvonne's laptop to send those emails to her family. So we went looking for Brian Breminger again to get answers.
Hey, Brian, I need to talk to you. How do you explain the fact that Yvonne's email that said she was in Costa Rica that she sent to people was actually sent by you from here in California? Can you answer that? You knew she was dead when you sent that email, didn't you? Brian, we really want you to talk to us. Answer some questions. He's never said a word. Never said a word to us. He will not answer any questions.
And what about Yvonne's dog, Georgia May, which had not been seen since she disappeared? Don Winner has a theory.
He knew that she loved that dog, and that if the dog was running around, he knew that anything she said about her taking off with some guy to Costa Rica, everybody would immediately know it was crap. So he had to get rid of the dog too.
In his investigation, Don Winner unwittingly found a key piece of evidence on Brian's Facebook page, where he had sold this machete.
After Yvonne disappeared, Breminger made a comment about that knife. He's like, yeah, that used to be mine. I brought it down with me when I came down from the States. And the chilling part is he made a comment that said, I've only used it to chop up one stripper. That's just chilling.
Special Agent Andrew Masters needs to get his hands on the machete to see if it was used in Yvonne's murder. Incredibly, he was able to track down the person who bought it from Brian in Panama.
This is the machete that Brian bought in the United States and took down with him to Panama.
Can you pick it up for me?
Sure. It's very heavy, it's weighted, and it would inflict a lot of damage.
Investigators had the machete, they had the email, and they had caught Brian in multiple lies. Soon, someone would stumble upon the most important evidence of all.
CBS Mornings is clearly fun.
Money saving. Dollar Jill's here to tell us what it means for you. Clearly delish. So what's on the menu today?
Clearly, CBS Mornings weekdays at 7 on CBS.
What happens when the world's best journalists come together?
Write a prescription for the healing of America.
We're retired and this is our paradise.
No, it's going.
You get the stories of America every night. You get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This is CBS.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth.
We'll hit the heights.
And reach for the stars.
Star power. I like it.
Ta-da!
I want to be part of this.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
You've probably heard of the NCIS from the hit TV series, but we're about to take you inside its real-life work. Listen to 48 Hours NCIS early and ad-free on the 48 Hours Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts.
Okay, let's go.
You guys good?
Start at the beginning.
All right, we good?
Keep going. The clock, it's ticking.
Off we go.
60 minutes. Is this what you want? 60 minutes. 60 minutes!
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
We seek answers, justice, and help.
Summer 2013. Nearly 2 years have passed since Yvonne Baldelli's disappearance.
You can feel like you're reading a book, a terrible mystery or murder mystery, and there's no end to it.
On June 26, 2013, the final chapter of this mystery began to unfold.
A former Marine who family members say murdered his girlfriend before...
FBI Special Agent Andrew Masters slapped the cuffs on Brian Breminger.
What did you say to him?
You're under arrest. He said, turn around, put your hands behind your back. He needed to answer for his crime.
How did you learn that Brian had been arrested?
Truth be told, I received a text from my dad, said they got the SOB. And I sat down in a sense of relief because now they believed us.
Brian Bremiger was charged with 13 felonies relating to the cover-up of Yvonne's death, but not murder. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Shane Harrigan and Mark Conover were lead prosecutors.
At that point, without having found the body, we didn't have quite enough to bring the murder charge.
But that would soon change.
Human remains have been found on a Panamanian island.
A local worker clearing some brush on the island where Brian and Yvonne lived came upon this duffel bag.
And when he unbuckled the clasp, he found Yvonne's skeletonized remains. By the time she was found 2 years later, it was only bones.
A DNA test confirmed it was Yvonne. Her remains were found just a few hundred yards from where the family had spent days searching.
I wanted to tell Michelle personally.
When I first heard the possibility that they found Yvonne, my first reaction was, for me, it's good news because I just feel good. We can nail this bastard.
While the family's prayers had been answered, an autopsy confirmed the hellish fact that Yvonne had been dismembered.
This is the actual device that was used to dismember Yvonne.
The most likely cause of death was being stabbed in the back at least twice.
Despite overwhelming evidence and proof that Bremiger had repeatedly lied, his wife Kristen continued to stand by him.
Kristen, may I ask, do you still believe in your husband's innocence? Can you just tell us that?
Don't touch the camera.
Then, for Yvonne's family, another cruel tragedy struck in the spring of 2014. Michelle, who had dedicated her life to finding justice for her sister, now faced another deadly enemy. She was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer.
I'm still alive to fight for my life, and I'm still alive to fight for my sister.
This was Michelle in June of 2014. And this was her just 3 months later.
Today, I'm going to be giving a deposition.
Weakened by cancer and given just weeks to live,
Do you solemnly swear or affirm?
Michelle, a crucial witness, agreed to tell her story while she still could. Brian Bremiger would sit directly across from her.
I'm going to try to ignore him as best I can.
And who was Brian Bremiger?
The defendant.
Do you see him in the courtroom here today?
Yes, I do.
Would you please point to him and describe where he is seated for the record?
He's sitting at the end, khaki outfit, at the end.
Michelle passed out after the exhausting testimony. It was a courageous act of love for her sister.
This might be the last thing I get to do for her. Over and over and over again, because it'll be on camera forever.
Days later, she died. It took years of diplomatic and legal wrangling, but in early 2015, the government of Panama finally agreed to let Brian be tried for murder on American soil.
We came to the conclusion that the only way that Brian Bremiger would face justice for his murderous act is if he was charged and convicted here in the United States.
Brian pleaded not guilty. The case was heading for trial in 2016 when investigators made another dramatic discovery. Yvonne's blood and DNA were found under the machete's handle.
So these 3 screws were undone. Mm-hmm. The handle opens up, and inside they find blood.
Right, they removed these 3 and just pulled it out here and conducted the testing on the blade and the inferior portion of the handle and found blood.
Whose blood?
Yvonne's.
Yvonne Baldelli's.
Yvonne Baldelli.
This now is a slam dunk. You know that this is the tool used to dismember her.
It was that made Brian finally realize he was not going to get out of he was not going to lie his way out.
It's over.
It's done.
He had cleaned the blade, but he hadn't cleaned underneath the handle. And it was that additional evidence that I believe eventually led Mr. Breminger to plead guilty.
Within a week, Breminger pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, while the other charges were dropped. And later, at his sentencing, finally admitted, after nearly 5 years of lies, to killing Yvonne Baldelli.
And I think if you look up in the dictionary, evil, and you see Brian's picture in there, he's the ultimate incarnate of evil in my mind.
In open court, Breminger apologized to Yvonne's family, but his words rang hollow.
Brian Breminger is a con artist. He had our daughter conned. He had his new wife conned. He had her family conned. He was able to live a double life, sometimes a triple life, and people buy what he says. But his actions show that he's not the person he says that he is.
Brian was sentenced to 26 years in federal prison. With the case over, Yvonne's remains were returned to her family. And laid to rest at sea.
To get her remains back and be able to give her a dignified resting place, I can sleep better at night knowing that she's not rotting in some jungle or deep in the ocean somewhere, knowing that she loved the ocean, knowing that we were able to put her in a place that she loved.
We brought her home, and I know that that was thanks to a lot of work of a lot of unsung heroes. I know.
In a way, two people were honored this day, Yvonne and her beloved sister Michelle, who battled a Marine to the end and won.
She's definitely a hero. She never gave up. To her dying day, she gave all she had.
What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
Anyone that doesn't agree women should be in the submarine force has to ask themselves why they would think about that.
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
Life is a little bit different now.
It's gonna take a while to get used to. And I say it to myself that I can't make this about me.
When we put people before politics.
What would happen if it was harder for Mexican residents to come over to work in Presidio?
I think we'd be in serious trouble.
Are you okay, ma'am?
What happens when you experience the story?
I'm shocked at how devastated this neighborhood is. How bad is it in your house?
Look at it.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
Here in Chicago.
Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
Ready? Yeah.
You ready?
And 1, 2, 3. Hey!
I can see clearly now.
Look at this outfit. Amazing. Give me some love, baby.
We got a toy. Look at this.
Oh, no! Time for another quick meal you can make any night of the week.
We've got tips to save on clothes, tech,
and more.
How I got here is nothing short of like a miracle.
talent.
Talent?
It's gonna be alright.
It's a bright, bright, bright way to start your day.
See you
on CBS Mornings.
Here comes a big one.
What I've seen, it's like chaos.
This is the pager that Hezbollah was using. How was this possible? Oh, come on.
Come on.
Whoa.
Wow.
Ask me the hard-hitting questions. I'm open to all of it.
60 minutes. Is this what you want?
60 minutes.
60 minutes!
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
Well, let me start with this.
This really Have you told the government?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
You want me to just
What's wrong with that argument?
What have you
Do
learned?
you know why?
Why? Why?
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
My mom was a research scientist, and my dad was a pediatrician. My mom was super outdoorsy, loved to be outdoors. I really viewed my dad as being a really good father, being very caring, engaged.
They were a great couple first 10 years of knowing each other, and then they sort of degraded.
After the divorce, we spent most of our time with my father. As I got older, he became more confrontational with my mother.
Just because you don't get along with somebody doesn't insinuate that you want to hurt them. And I never, ever, ever wanted to hurt Uta.
He asked me, would it be bad if Uta wasn't around anymore?
I was the first one to find her. I drove over. The door was unlocked. I went in. I could hear the water running. I knocked. I came into the bathroom and I found her in the tub underneath the water.
911, what is your emergency? I found my girlfriend. She must have hit her head and fallen over the bathtub. I think she's dead.
The police said this was a suicide. Everybody knew it wasn't a suicide.
As I thought about my dad's behavior before and after her death, it became more and more apparent to me that he was responsible for killing her.
I didn't have a motive to kill Uta, and I don't know that I was the last person to see Uta alive.
Johnny did not kill Uta. He cared too much about having his kids' mother in his kids' lives. Pella was a teenager who got swept up in a crusade that was started by others.
The evidence is overwhelming. It was this defendant, Johnny Wall, that killed her.
My father being put on trial is the culmination of a lot of work.
The struggle occurred in Uta's bedroom. Someone else was there.
Look carefully at those entries. It's reasonable that she could have done that to herself.
I will be sitting across from him. I'm sure he doesn't have warm feeling towards me. His conviction is incredibly important to me.
I think I asked direct questions. I don't know that they're tough questions per se. When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives? So you would encourage Democrats to work with Donald Trump on an issue like healthcare? That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand. That means a civil conversation with perspective.
Sunday morning, Wicked Oscar nominee Cynthia Erivo. A few words from Flo, plus 100 years of The New Yorker. Listen for the trumpet.
It was almost like being face to face with the devil.
Women riding bicycles dismembered.
She just vanished.
48 hours reports. I fought and fought.
911, what is your emergency?
She disappeared off the face of the earth.
Ever think in your wildest dreams someone might want to kill you?
This almost became a game of psychological warfare.
You're caught. You're gonna go down.
Stream 48 hours, 24/7. CBS Sunday night.
Here we go.
The ultimate tradition continues.
From what I've seen, it's like chaos.
America's longest-running news magazine show is back
For 60 minutes!
60 minutes.
with a new season.
Hey, let's go.
You're willing to talk about anything. I'm open to all of it. Ask me the hard-hitting questions.
So how do you get over the nerves?
Honestly, it's a whole bunch of mind
The most influential people.
Who's the best coach in college football?
Let me see a mirror so I can look at it.
Are you a billionaire yet?
None of your business, man. You trying to get me robbed?
Investigative journalism.
Am I getting a real look at what life is like in here today? Absolutely not.
Do you think people visiting know that these were looted?
When stories threaten our way of life, 60 Minutes demands answers.
This is the pager that Hezbollah was using.
Do you have hope that you may find him yet? They were asking me to do something that was illegal.
They're fighting for faulty parts?
Yeah.
What is the most important takeaway for our audience?
How big of a problem is doping?
Where was the military?
Why are people suspicious?
That sounds like a problem.
How is this possible?
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Whoa.
Wow.
What is going on?
I'm Scott Pelley.
I'm John Worth.
I'm Leslie Stahl.
I'm Bill Whitaker.
I'm Sharon Alfonsi.
I'm Cecilia Vega.
I'm Anderson Cooper.
This is 60 Minutes.
The CBS News original.
Showtime, baby.
It's time for 60 Minutes Sunday on CBS. Don't miss a minute. Now streaming. What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
I'm not asking that we ignore disability, rather that we do not ignore ability.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
September 25th, 2011 was one of the last days of my mom's life. We were up here camping. We loved to get out in the outdoors. My mom was always pushing when we were young, take us out on hikes.
The majestic mountains high above Salt Lake City have been a playground for 19-year-old Pella Wall and his family since his childhood.
It was a beautiful day. I think the leaves may have been changing, just gorgeous. We have a picture with all of us, the whole group all together.
He treasures that picture from September 2011, the last time he and his mother, Uta von Schwedler, ever would be in these mountains together.
I definitely feel that that is a special place. That's one of the last places I was with her. It's beautiful, and so I do feel that there's some sort of special connection up there on the peak.
This evening we meet to celebrate the life of Uta von Schwedler.
2 years later, Pella, his younger brother and sister, and family friends gathered to celebrate her life.
Uta, you are missed by your community, your family, and your friends, but your life and your legacy carries on.
Comforting words, but little real consolation, as was clear when Pella read a message from his brother Liam, remembering their mother.
One day I was saying, "See you soon," and the next day my world was flipped upside down with the police on my doorstep. No one knew if it was a suicide, an accidental death, or a homicide. For a very long time, I just could not process it. It was really traumatizing.
One person not on hand to recall those dark days, Uta's ex-husband and father of their children, Johnny Wall.
When I was very small, we actually lived in Malibu, right next to the walls.
Klaus Fiebig is Johnny Wall's childhood friend.
Is it stretching a point to say that he was like a brother to you?
No, we really became tight.
Years later, while in grad school, Klaus introduced Johnny to Uta, who had moved to California from her home in Germany to study biology.
And it clicked with them, and they became a couple. And I thought, what a wonderful thing, where you have two good friends, and you introduce them, and it works.
And it did work, at least for a while. 5 years after they married in California, the couple moved here to Salt Lake City, 1-year-old Pella in tow. Both Johnny and Uta had jobs at the University of Utah Medical Center. He is a resident in pediatrics, and she as a research scientist studying HIV.
One of her papers had been actually recognized as one of the most, I think it was the 30 most prominent HIV papers in the last 30 years.
Almost this entire lab is focused on different aspects of HIV research.
Biomedical researchers Heidi Schubert and Orly Arden met Uta during her early days in the lab.
We had this chemistry, she looked at me, I looked at her, and that's it, we were friends. She was passionate about learning a lot of stuff and just being involved. She was always calling you up, hey, do you want to go to the reading of that play? Do you want to go to the dance performance? Do you want to go to the concert?
But her true passion was her 4 kids. 2 have asked not to appear on camera.
She was a combination of a soccer mom and a working mom. She would run from the lab home on her bike, get into the car, drive the kids to a soccer game, run back, take another kid to wherever they needed.
Dr. Wall was busy as well, building his practice as an extremely well-liked and well-respected pediatrician.
And he was a fabulous pediatrician. His patients loved him.
Wendy Wall, Johnny's older sister, remembers how excited her brother was to be a father.
I think nothing in his life made him happier than being a dad. He's someone who just loves kids.
It was, on the surface, a perfect family. Beneath the surface, it was a very different story.
I think there were a lot of issues, a lot having to do with us children.
I know that all the kids struggled with their mother. I mean, Uta was a lovely person, but she could be really awful at times, too.
Your father alleged that she was physically abusing the children.
She had disciplined us from time to time. I had been hit when I was younger, but it was something that was when I was very young, but not something that continued.
I think Uta is somebody who very much loved her children, but I also think she really, really wrestled with maternal responsibilities and with being a mom.
In fact, years later, Uta would end up in family court several times, once accused of actually biting her youngest son.
How the story goes, I suppose, is that my brother Liam was on top of her car, and my mother was trying to get him down, and somehow she had bitten him.
Uta always denied it, but did go for court-ordered counseling. But the marriage was in trouble long before that.
Johnny told us that Uta was having an affair. She was having an affair with another scientist in Germany. And he was obviously very upset about this.
The question of this affair was something that my dad did bring up regularly.
I think that was very, very tough for Johnny.
And it only got worse when in 2006, Uta ended the marriage, leaving behind her 4 children, ages 5 to 12.
Ultimately, Uta walked out. She had an affair with somebody else, and she walked out on Johnny and her kids.
I recall being told that she was moving out and being very upset by it. Mm-hmm. But I do very distinctly remember thinking that it was not for the worse that they were splitting up.
They tried to work out a flexible custody plan with the kids living with their father most of the time. It didn't work, and rising tensions soon became the backdrop to tragedy.
I can see clearly now. Clearly, CBS Mornings.
Weekdays on CBS.
Yeah!
Tony, coming?
No, I'm gonna stick around for an hour.
Hey!
CBS Mornings Plus with Adriana Diaz and Tony DeCopel, right after CBS Mornings.
It's just like mornings.
Plus fun. Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day.
Politics isn't a game. When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives? Politics is about policy. So you would encourage Democrats to work with Donald Trump on an issue like healthcare? I'm a voracious consumer of information, and I'm impatient. I don't like to be spun. Do you know if there are active terror cells in the United States right now? To be moderator of Face the Nation means bringing the most powerful stakeholders to the table to become better informed.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
While America's relaxing policies around social media and the internet, Germany is cracking down on lies and vitriol online.
How do people react when you take their phones from them?
They are shocked.
Which approach makes more sense? Plus, Timothy Chalamet only on 60 Minutes.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go, with the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes.
Like a John Grisham novel come to life.
Real lives.
He pointed a gun to me and said, "This is the day you die." And he shot me.
Real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
I'm an innocent man, and I hope the whole world can see it now.
Catch the latest episodes. Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
The all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This is CBS.
I've always considered myself a happy person. Of course, ups and downs, it's hard times, it's happy times. But I'd say on the whole, I'm very happy.
A real achievement for Pella Wall, given his family history. A perfect storm of abuse charges, family fights, and finally, divorce.
My defense mechanism for myself is looking at everything as dispassionately as I can, so not trying to get super emotionally involved.
Apparently it worked. Despite his volatile home life, Pella excelled in school.
I got a 4.0 GPA, so I had all A's, and I was awarded academic all-state for soccer.
It wasn't easy, with Mom and Dad living in separate homes.
After the divorce, we spent most of our time with my father. It was probably a couple times a week switching between houses, which was very stressful. It's something that we hated doing. None of us wanted to do it.
But it sounds, on the other hand, as if they were struggling to do something that was fair.
My dad very much wanted us to spend time with my mom, which was very good.
But Dr. Wall's goodwill didn't last very long.
As he became more confrontational with my mother, I think I viewed him less and less as a good father.
He was frustrated with Uta. Sometimes she would supposed to take the kids for a weekend or something, and she would make other plans and drop them at his doorstep.
Even the family's history became a major source of dispute.
I don't quite understand how the scrapbooks became so contentious. The scrapbooks were something that my mom very much cared about.
The scrapbooks were filled with photos that Johnny had taken. Johnny was the family photographer, and they were organized by Uta.
She would stay up late and just put everything in order and try to remember and write everything down.
So these scrapbooks really meant something.
They were in the original divorce document.
My dad used those scrapbooks to control her. So I'm not going to give you the passports unless you let me have the scrapbooks, or I'm not going to give the scrapbooks back until you give me the passports, or that kind of thing.
That's very odd.
It's very odd. It's not normal.
Their battle lasted more than 5 years, during which time Johnny Wall remarried and divorced again.
His second wife had also left him, and he was blaming it all on Uta.
It might have been the end of 2010 that he was giving her the year's warning and he was going to move away and take the kids.
It was also in 2010 that Nils Abramson, a local therapist and social worker, began a relationship with Uta.
She had a very brisk kind of walk and always smiling. She had the 10 different colored watch straps so they could match her socks.
Nils said Uta enjoyed life to the fullest and wasn't shy about speaking her mind.
She would tell a stranger, "You need to put sunscreen on."
That's very funny.
It's like, it's not offensive, but it's getting into somebody's business you don't really need to.
And Nils says he saw firsthand the lengths to which Johnny Wall would go to provoke his ex-wife.
At one point, he shut off his home phone. After that, she said, I'll buy the kids' phones. So she bought the service for all the kids. And then he would try to interrupt that too.
In his life, the center was, what can I do to hurt Uta? More than, what can I do to help my kids?
But in those last months, friends say Uta was getting her life together, just as Johnny was losing control of his.
The household was terrible.
What do you mean terrible?
He didn't have the heat on. Everything was messy. It looked like a homeless person sleeping almost.
Really? It was that bad? You're not exaggerating?
No, it was very, very bad. That was when I really realized, wow, this is getting very crazy.
In early 2011, Uta had it and went to court, hoping to win primary custody of her children.
They were pretty much hostages in this battle, and I think it got to a point in which the kids had to be taken out, and she was aware that she needs to do that.
Finally, in September, an agreement was reached to review the children's custody arrangement. So she thought that there was going to be a change here.
I think that she thought, she was pretty sure that things would change.
Unfortunately, she was right. 5 days later, everything changed. On Tuesday, September 27, 2011, the kids were staying with Johnny, and Nils and Uta looked forward to a quiet evening alone.
I went in like I normally would and heard the water running, tapped on the door and said hello, hello, and opened the door, and there she was underwater. And, I grabbed her arm, pulled her out of the water partway, but as soon as I lifted her up, she was stiff, and I knew.
You didn't have any doubt?
I knew she was dead.
The street where Uta von Schwedler lived is quiet now, but it was teeming that night with Salt Lake City police, homicide detectives, crime scene investigators, and the local media, all with one basic question. How is it possible that a bright, vivacious, very fit 49-year-old woman could drown in her own bathtub?
I thought she might have slipped and hit her head.
Investigators found no sign of a break-in and no valuables missing from the house. What they did find in the tub of cold water, along with Uta's body, was a kitchen knife and, oddly, one of those treasured photo albums, evidence that seemed to hint at suicide.
When they suggested that, I was blown away.
As far as you're concerned, this is impossible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, completely impossible.
Nils told police there was another explanation that made a lot more sense.
I told him everything that, that I had done and that I knew about. It's like, did she have any enemies? It's like, well, yes, probably her ex-husband.
That very night, investigators picked up 47-year-old Johnny Wall for questioning.
Johnny was awakened in the middle of the night, dragged out of bed, hauled down to the police station, told by police detectives that his wife was dead, his ex-wife was dead, and then interrogated for 4 hours.
Dr. Wall appeared shocked and overwhelmed.
I'm trying to be honest, as you guys are accusing me of something really horrendous.
It is really horrendous. Somebody died. Somebody's not here anymore.
Yeah, and I can't grieve because you're yelling at me.
Johnny Wall waived his rights to an attorney during the police interrogation, but later hired Fred Meadows as his defense lawyer.
Partway through the interview, Johnny makes a statement, I was asleep, and then it's like a light goes on with these two cops. They start in with well, we have a witness who saw you there. And that was a total lie.
Don't you think I would remember it if I went over to her house?
Apparently not. You don't remember a lot of things.
Johnny's memory seemed fuzzy, and detectives were frustrated.
Did you go over to Uta's house between Thursday and the time that you picked the kids up?
I don't remember.
Are you kidding? How did you pass grade school?
The following morning, my dad walks in trailed by my 3 siblings, and then he told me that my mother was dead and that he was a suspect.
Stunned by the news himself, he could hardly believe his father's reaction.
It was out of control. He essentially started acting like an infant. He's laying on my bed in the fetal position, crying, saying, I want my mommy, having us comfort him. A whole lot of things about, You know, is this a dream? I just want to wake up. Am I a monster? Could I have done this?
A traumatized Dr. Wall checked himself into a psychiatric hospital, leaving his son to answer those questions.
I was absolutely 100% convinced that he was responsible for my mother's death.
Here comes a big one.
What I've seen, it's like chaos.
This is the pager that Hezbollah was using.
How was this possible?
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Whoa.
Wow.
Ask me the hard-hitting questions. I'm open to all of it.
60 minutes. Is this what you want?
60 minutes.
60 minutes!
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
Go to the ends of the earth.
We'll hit the heights.
A great adventure together.
And reach for the stars.
Star power. I like it.
So cool.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Something that's undeniable.
With mindfulness. Innovative.
Magical.
It's like being a child.
And truly original reporting.
How'd you do your research?
I tell a good story. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
No matter how you start your day, one thing is clear.
Actually, two things. Pretty sure it's three.
Guys, whether it's news, money, health, or wellness, sports, movies, or even inspiration.
Clearly, CBS Mornings is the place to be. That's like 7 things.
Okay, clearly, I'm bad at math. Always been.
Clearly.
Oh, okay,
Clearly.
okay. Clearly, CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7 on CBS.
What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
Anyone that doesn't agree women should be in the submarine force has to ask themselves why they would think about that.
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
Life is a little bit different now.
It's gonna take a while to get used to. And I say it to myself that I can't make this about me.
When we put people before politics.
What would happen if it was harder for Mexican residents to come over to work in Presidio?
I think we'd be in serious trouble.
Are you okay, ma'am?
What happens when you experience the story?
I'm shocked at how devastated this neighborhood is. How bad is it in your house?
Look at it.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
Here in Chicago.
Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
The medical examiner's report on Uta's death, 6 weeks in the making, gave the cause as drowning, but left undetermined how she drowned. Johnny Wall had his own theory. Did he tell you that this was suicide?
He did. I think a couple times at the dinner table it came up, and he basically said that your mom chose to leave you, that it was a choice that she had committed suicide.
Pella wasn't buying it.
So I thought about my dad's behavior before and after her death. It became more and more apparent to me that he was responsible for killing her.
Several aspects of the case baffled investigators. Uta had superficial knife wounds on her leg and one wrist. And she also had a high level of the anti-anxiety medication Xanax in her system. Did she ever take antidepressants?
No.
Did she ever take anti-anxiety medication?
No, I mean, she used recreation and exercise as her mental health drug.
She was at about twice a therapeutic level. It was clearly enough to make her drowsy, maybe render her unconscious. And if she's trying to get into a bathtub, it's not that hard to drown.
But police grew more suspicious of Dr. Wall when it was learned that just months before Uta's death, he'd written a Xanax prescription for his mother.
The mother had said she didn't recall receiving it. Then when they talked to the dad later, Dad said, yeah, we got it, and I got rid of it.
The time of Uta's death was put at sometime after 10:30 Monday night, September 26th. As for what Johnny Wall was doing early the next morning...
The whole time that I was awake and home before I went to school, he was not home.
And that was unusual?
That was unusual.
Johnny did turn up that morning just in time to drive his younger children to school. And then at 8:30 a.m., he had his car washed, as seen on this security tape.
From what I've read, at least, he didn't strike me as somebody who was particularly meticulous.
He was about some things.
That afternoon, before his mother was found, Pella noticed something odd about his dad.
He had this terrible scratch, blood on the side of his eye.
I mean, this was a serious eye injury?
It was a serious eye injury. He said that he had been sleeping on the porch the night before and that Molly, our dog, accidentally scratched him in the eye.
Was that something that he did very often?
This whole sleeping on the porch thing was not something I ever saw him do.
Including that night?
Including that night.
If Pella's fears were true, that his father killed his mother, then he and his siblings were now living with a murderer.
Part of the reason I was concerned for my safety, as well as my siblings' safety, was that I saw this anger that he had towards my mother. It didn't die with her, it jumped and it expanded.
And you really didn't feel safe?
I really didn't feel safe. This was not a superficial concern. This is, I might die.
But Salt Lake authorities made no effort to remove the children from Johnny Wall's care, and the police investigation stalled.
For a long time, I was just hoping that the police would make the arrest and that once the arrest was made, then everything could move forward, the kids would be safe, and it didn't happen.
And so in January 2012, one day before his 18th birthday, Pella Wall packed his bags and moved out of his father's house, leaving his siblings behind.
I realized that my presence there was not protecting my siblings. And once I had that realization and I moved out, then I could take active steps to protect them.
And your father's reaction to this was?
Nothing positive, not a positive reaction. He's extremely upset.
He sought refuge with the family of his best friend, Jessica Oglesby, whose parents, Amy and John, already had 6 kids.
You know what, Pella, let's just do a seasoning on top.
And yet welcomed Pella with open arms.
He didn't have the support necessary to help him do what he really wanted to do.
Which was?
Was to have the children removed from their father's care. And he asked for my help, and I helped him.
Pella then turned to the courts, beginning a vicious tug-of-war over custody of his siblings, and eventually winning.
So they were removed from my dad's care, and they lived with a series of essentially family friends.
A victory for Pella, but the war was far from over. His dad sued him for those treasured scrapbooks, whereupon Pella fought back with a wrongful death suit, holding his father responsible for his mother's death.
Describe your relationship with Ute.
That meant Pella's lawyers could question Johnny Wall directly and under oath.
Have you ever told anyone that you would be better off if Ute was dead?
No, that wouldn't be true.
When questioned by police just hours after Uta's death, Johnny's memory had seemed to fail him.
But don't you think I would remember it if I went over to her house?
Apparently not. You don't remember a lot of things.
But 18 months later, in a deposition for Pella's suit, it was much better.
I don't know why she was there. I think she was probably looking for something.
He now told an elaborate story about discovering Ute in his house in the early morning hours of the day she died.
Can you tell me what was in your house that Ute may have wanted?
An old bag of coffee.
Coffee bags?
Well, coffee bags, because she had told him previously that she had put some substance in the coffee that caused his second ex-wife to have a miscarriage.
Run that by me again?
Yeah, and I don't know why he said that. That's what he said in the deposition. And again, that was speculation on his part.
Problem is, the miscarriages were in 2008, 3 years before Uta died. And Johnny's then wife said she never even drank coffee when she was pregnant.
There were a whole lot of new stories that we hadn't heard, contradictory statements, newfound tales that he's spinning in front of me.
DNA results from the crime scene, including from under one of Uta's fingernails, didn't clarify things, showing only a positive match to a male in the Wall family.
So your contention is that this DNA is absolutely meaningless?
It's meaningless. Johnny has the same DNA as his 2 sons.
But with the knife wounds, the Xanax, and Johnny's own words, investigators felt they had a solid case. And on April 25, 2013, more than a year and a half after Uta was found dead in her bathtub, Johnny Wall was arrested and charged with her murder.
So what was it like then when finally, after all this time, he was actually charged?
Exhilarating, a real huge relief. I couldn't believe that it had happened.
I felt devastated. I think we all did. It was an incredible tragedy.
On February 18, 2015, the doctor, now the defendant, would stand trial.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is only one person who did this to Uta von Schwedler, the defendant.
Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is going to show that those knife wounds were self-inflicted, that the Xanax was most likely voluntarily injected. And without those facts, it's clear the death was not a homicide.
Soon, a jury will decide how Uta von Schwedler really died.
What happens when the world's best journalists come together?
This was an entire building. It will take years to rebuild.
We're from CBS News, American television.
You get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This case,
it's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
No matter how you start your day, one thing is clear.
CBS Mornings is the best way to start your day.
I can see clearly now.
My morning routine.
The first thing I do when I wake up is turn off the alarm.
I try to remember where I put my phone down.
One alarm goes off at 4 a.m.
I need not 1, not 2, but...
And I'm out the door at 4:15.
3 snoozes to get out of bed fully coherent.
How much detail are you looking for?
I love a bath full of bubbles. The more bubbles, the better.
I'm very quick with the actual coffee, shave, shower, dressed out the door, but all around that is just pure chaos. For example, this morning, these are dirty socks.
You want my honest answer? Am I a morning person? I gotta be honest. I wish morning started at like 10 a.m.
Can I say that? Clearly.
It's a bright way to start your day. CBS Mornings weekdays at 7 on CBS.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
What happens when we follow the human side of the headline?
I was in tears.
Life is a little bit different now.
It's gonna take a while to get used to. And I said to myself that I can't make this about me.
You get the all-new CBS Evening News.
His campaign to see his father tried for murder has cost Pella Wall emotionally and financially.
It's essentially my entire inheritance from my mother.
He says he has no regrets. But his Aunt Wendy, Johnny's sister, regrets everything he's done.
I think that Johnny felt devastated, when Pella, in some ways you could say, turned on him, I suppose. Everybody in our family, Johnny included, still very much loves Pella. And I think that we're all trying to remember that he's gone through incredible trauma.
The culmination of Pella's efforts, the murder trial of his father,
Well, Mr. Jansen, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
leads off with testimony from the man who made the grisly discovery of Uta's body.
The state would call Nils Abramson.
Her boyfriend, Nils Abramson, told prosecutor Matthew Jansen what else he found.
This is Alana's personal scrapbook album. You indicated that this photo album was in the tub? In the tub, yes. It was floating by her feet by the cold water shutoff.
This was a long time in coming. What was your general state of mind when the trial began?
Apprehensive, but completely ready.
Nils' cross-examination was rough.
I don't remember.
As defense attorney Fred Meadows zeroed in on him as a possible suspect.
Did you turn the body?
I don't recall.
Let me have you read the beginning with the fire department. Does that refresh your recollection as to what you said to Wilkinson?
Yes, it does.
And did you in fact tell him that you rolled the body?
It says right there I did.
It was implied that you might be a murderer.
I knew that would come up. I wasn't sure it would come up the way it did, but I misspoke in my first statement.
To clear up any confusion, the prosecutor asked Nils one simple question.
Did you kill Uta von Swettler? No.
Pella, now 21, was a prosecution witness, but the judge gave him special permission to sit through all the testimony.
Mr. Wall, if you want to come forward and be sworn, please raise your right hand.
He'd waited more than 3 years for this day. Did you approach the stand thinking, I am not going to look at him, or I'm going to look right at him?
I knew that I'd look at my dad at some point on the stand, but I think most of what I was focusing my attention on was talking to the jury. So I was in my bedroom getting my stuff, getting ready to go, and my dad came in trailed by my 3 younger siblings. They were all kind of like crying, obviously very distraught, very upset. And my dad said, Uta's dead and they think I did it.
Pella told the jury about his father's bizarre behavior.
And so he was kind of just babbling and rambling, but he was saying things along the lines of, am I a monster? What if I did it and I don't remember? I think he also said, I want my mom or I want my mommy at one point.
All rise for the jury.
Defense attorney Meadows, treading lightly,
Find my notes.
suggested Pella didn't really know much about his parents' relationship or why they fought.
I feel like I heard about the divorce decree quite a bit. I don't know that I actually read it myself.
The bottom line is you really don't know, in terms of what the court had ordered, what your dad was entitled to with those.
At the time or now?
At the time.
I may have known that they were shared property. I may have known that. I'm not 100% sure, though.
You may be seated.
With a circumstantial case and no direct evidence against Dr. Wall, the trial soon became
that is an impact.
A battle of expert witnesses.
There's 15 different patterns altogether. The majority of them are on the top side.
Prosecution blood expert Rod Englert.
This comforter is consistent with a violent struggle. There's some violence going on. There's a struggle, more than one person.
Englert told the jury that Uta fought desperately to live, despite high levels of Xanax in her system.
Uta rallied and was fighting back.
In the bathroom?
In the bathroom.
She stopped fighting when the Xanax kicked in, prosecutors believe, theorizing that it was injected by Dr. Wall, who crushed the pills and mixed them with alcohol. Ridiculous, says the defense. Uta took the Xanax herself. and the bloodstains don't contradict that.
Could they tell you if someone rallied after being unconscious or unalert?
No.
Defense expert Anita Zanin.
Could you conclusively determine whether or not there was a struggle there?
I could not. There's some movement, but what caused it, whether it was one person, 2 people, 10 people, I can't answer that.
Another defense expert, forensic pathologist Judy Melnick, said the knife wounds on Uta's leg and wrist do tell a story.
None of these wounds are fatal. They're all superficial. The fact that the knife is underneath her, in my opinion, makes it more likely that it's self-inflicted.
She also had a theory as to why one of Uta's precious photo albums would be found with her.
There's a much-loved photo album in the bathtub. People who self-injure or commit suicide will often have mementos next to them.
But when prosecutor Anna Rossi suggested that the crime scene was staged to look like a suicide,
I want to talk about some of the questions that you had. And
things got heated.
If someone came in there with the intent to murder her and make it look like a suicide, they're not going to stab her there, correct?
She's a tough person. I don't see any injuries on her body that suggest that someone restrained her in order to inject her. And even if they did, she's still got multiple minutes where she could fight them off.
Your Honor, again, I'm going to...
It doesn't make sense.
Johnny Wall did not testify, but his own words,
I'm assuming, I don't know,
on tape when questioned by police, were powerful evidence against him.
I'm asking you a very simple question. I know. Did you drive from your house to Uta's house between Thursday and Monday? I don't remember.
So what did you make of that?
I think it was suspicious. He was evading questions.
What traumatic incident could have happened between Thursday and Monday that did happen? You don't know.
Trying to basically create a scenario that he could wiggle out of.
The defense argued Dr. Wall's memory lapses were natural.
You're selectively saying that.
Given that detectives bullied and lied to him for hours.
You think this is our first rodeo? The reason why you don't want to remember is because you killed her. And we will prove it. How can you say that? We will prove it. I didn't do it.
The prosecution's final witness?
Morning.
Dr. Marcella Fierro, who said, based on the medical and psychological history, Uta had no reason to kill herself.
This is an organized professional woman, okay? She has 4 kids, which is enough to drive anybody nuts, but she's not nuts, all right? And yes, several years ago, she was upset and she was depressed because she had a pending divorce. That, my friends, is normal. That is not mental illness.
With only closing arguments remaining, that issue, Uta's state of mind, may be a major factor when the jury decides the doctor's fate.
What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
Anyone that doesn't agree women should be in the submarine force has to ask themselves why they would think about that.
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
Life is a little bit different now.
It's gonna take a while to get used to. And I say it to myself that I can't make this about me.
When we put people before politics.
What would happen if it was harder for Mexican residents to come over to work in Presidio?
I think we'd be in serious trouble.
Are you okay, ma'am?
What happens when you experience the story?
I'm shocked at how devastated this neighborhood is. How bad is it in your house?
Look at it.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
Here in Chicago.
Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
Ready? Yeah.
You ready?
And 1, 2, 3. Hey!
I can see clearly now.
Look at this outfit. Amazing. Give me some love, baby.
We got a toy. Look at this.
Oh, no! Time for another quick meal you can make any night of the week.
We've got tips to save on clothes, tech,
and more.
How I got here is nothing short of like a miracle.
talent.
Talent?
It's gonna be alright.
It's a bright, bright, bright way to start your day.
See you
On CBS Mornings. comes a big one. What I've seen, it's like chaos.
This is the pager that Hezbollah was using.
How was this possible?
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Whoa.
Wow.
Ask me the hard-hitting questions. I'm open to all of it.
60 minutes. Is this what you want?
60 minutes.
60 minutes!
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
Is the state prepared to proceed with closing argument?
State is ready.
All right, go ahead.
4 weeks of testimony has come down to 2 questions. Did Johnny Wall kill Uta von Schwedler? Or did Uta kill herself? What was your state of mind? How did you feel it had gone?
I felt good. At one point, I was scared it was going too well. You know, I was afraid something bad was going to happen.
As you've already heard many times, Uta von Schwedler was found dead in her bungalow home. This was no suicide. Uta was murdered.
It makes no sense to say these are defensive injuries. The locations are consistent with them being self-imposed.
Defense attorney Fred Meadows also attacked the testimony of the state's expert witness, Dr. Marcella Fierro.
She's small and she's thin.
Who testified that Xanax would have rendered Uta unconscious.
I think she used the expression that it was like she would be hit by a board or knocked out, something to that effect. Well, if she's unconscious, how do those handprints show up on the wall? They can't. If she's struggling and fighting, why don't we have more than just the handprints? Just because Dr. Marcella Fierro thinks something happened doesn't mean it did.
Dr. Fierro didn't say that she got hit by a board when that Xanax was administered. She said that she was hit by a brick wall, and I'll contend that's a Johnny Brickman wall that hit her, and hit her hard.
I expect Johnny to be vindicated. I believe that Johnny will be found innocent.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the case is now concluded, and what remains is for you to deliberate and decide the verdict in this case.
For you to prevail, basically the jury has to believe his story on about 5 different subjects. If they doubt any one of them, it sort of falls apart.
No, that's not true. You got to remember, we don't have to prove anything.
Right.
The state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed it.
We're told that deliberations could go well past 5 o'clock tonight.
In fact, the jury deliberated until almost 9, and then a verdict.
We got up, we started yelling around the house, we have verdict, let's go, let's get our stuff on.
I got the text and I was out the door like a bullet.
In the packed courtroom, members of one family hope for 2 very different outcomes.
Dr. Wall, would you and your counsel please rise? The verdict will now be read.
State of Utah versus Johnny Brickman Wall. We, the jurors in the above case, find the defendant, Johnny Brickman Wall, as follows. Count 1, criminal homicide murder, guilty.
On one side, warm embraces and tears of joy. On the other, shock and disbelief. For Johnny Wall, no obvious emotion at all.
As soon as that word was read, there was just this release of breath, just right? It was just like this huge weight had just dropped off. A lot of relief, a lot of happiness.
People are going to hear the word happiness, and it's going to be a little jarring, because this is such a wrenching experience for anyone to have gone through.
Happiness in the sense of safety. We can put this stage of our life behind us.
Compassion, love,
but no verdict can fill the void.
I dearly miss Uta's bright and engaging smile.
In a written statement, Johnny Wall's family said this verdict will not bring Uta back. Now, to that tragedy has been added the conviction of an innocent man.
I think on some level he really does believe that he's innocent, and at this point that he was wrongly convicted.
Pella has his conviction. He would like a confession.
You don't expect that you'll ever be in a situation where you'll be able to talk to him and just say what were you thinking? Why did this happen? You know.
I mean, I expect that I will talk to him once he's in prison. I mean, I think I can ask him the questions, but I don't expect that he'll answer. He'll just, shake his head and basically maintain the victim stance that he's always maintained.
But you do think you'll talk to him again?
Yeah, I think I will.
In the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Okay, guys.
Pella and his younger siblings consider the Oglesbys their family.
And here we go, 1, 2, 3.
Although the memories of their mother, Uta, are as enduring as the mountains she loved.
I think she really enjoyed being up here, being outside in the fresh air.
How do you want people to remember her?
I just want people to remember her as a person, as a real person. And I think that the real Uta, my real mom, that's who I want to remember, and that's who I want other people to remember.
With the curly red hair?
Curly red hair.
Three months after the murder trial, Uta von Schwedler's family and friends were reunited in a Salt Lake City courtroom at the sentencing hearing for her ex-husband and convicted killer, Johnny Wall. Oldest son Pella Wall was there front and center and witnessed his father enter the courtroom dressed in prison blues, handcuffs, and leg shackles.
So please step forward and tell me anything you'd like me to consider in making my sentencing decision today.
Pella told the crowded courtroom how his father's fatal decision had caused so much damage.
The fact that my father clearly premeditated my own mother's murder, making the incomprehensible judgment that she was not fit to live, is something I will have to carry for the rest of my life.
Then, Johnny Wall, the former pediatrician, finally would break his silence with a message for his children.
I can no longer assist them and support them in achieving their hopes and dreams, nor can I comfort them in their times of need. I can only hope that they know how much I love them unconditionally, absolutely.
And he emphatically denied any involvement in his ex-wife's death.
I did not kill Uta. I am innocent of this crime. As for my future, it is my intent to exercise my right to appeal, and I will continue to fight this wrongful conviction.
We, the jurors in the above case, find the defendant.
The jury had recommended Wall serve a sentence of 15 years to life for Uta's murder, and the judge agreed.
What the jury found was a chilling and despicable crime. This is a sad day, and it's with a heavy heart that I impose this sentence.
Pella now can begin a new chapter in his life. Like his father, he plans to be a physician.
I think I asked direct questions. I don't know that they're tough questions per se.
When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives?
So you would encourage Democrats to work with Donald Trump on an issue like healthcare. That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand. That means a civil conversation with perspective.
Go to the ends of the earth.
We'll hit the heights.
And reach for the stars.
Star power.
Ta-da!
On CBS Sunday morning.
I can see clearly now. Ooh, gonna be a bright, sunshiny day.
That's right.
What happens when the world's best journalists come together?
Write a prescription for the healing of America.
You get the stories of America every night. You get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
CBS News. Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, Sunday on CBS.
Well, let me start with this.
This really happened.
Have you told the government?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
You want me to just
What's
keep
wrong
going?
with that argument?
What have you
Do
learned?
you know why?
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 It's time for 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
Crystal always had a great spirit about her. She knew what she wanted. She went for it.
To jump out of a perfectly
Jumping
good airplane.
out of a plane.
She could take care of herself.
I did it, punk out like a sissy girl.
She was obviously very beautiful, very attractive, but there was something about her. She radiated light. I worked with Crystal as a flight attendant. She was definitely a goofball, and she would even describe herself as a dork.
She kind of has like a gypsy soul, like she was a flight attendant, you know, she just likes traveling.
I've been dating Crystal McDowell for a few weeks now. We'd both been divorced, and we knew exactly what we wanted. You know, when you first meet somebody and you're kind of on cloud nine, that's kind of how we were.
Tropical storm Harvey is expected to strengthen into a hurricane before making landfall in Texas. Hurricane warnings in place along most of the Texas coast.
Friday morning, August 25th, is when she left the house.
She was actually living with her ex-husband. She was living in the master bedroom downstairs, and he had moved into a bedroom upstairs.
He had such a passion of love for her. It was almost like an obsessive, controlling love.
She sent me a few text messages, and I replied back, but I never got a reply after that. So I thought maybe she was just preoccupied with getting ready for the storm.
Across southern Texas, grocery store shelves are bare. People are rushing to stock up on last-minute supplies.
At that point in time, I just started trying to find relatives or friends to reach out to them to see if they knew where she was. And that's when I reached out to Jeff Walters. He's her uncle.
I get messages from her every morning. I get messages all throughout the day. She's one of the most responsible people that I know. She never loses contact with us.
Chambers County Sheriff's Office.
It's my niece.
Okay, your niece.
No one can get a hold of her. No one has heard from her. And I'm really concerned.
It's a serious storm. It's going to last 4 or 5 days, and quite frankly, this is day one.
This morning, police are searching for a Texas mother who mysteriously disappeared before Harvey hit.
We are hampered by some of the flood issues, but we are as aggressive as ever trying to locate Crystal McDowell.
I knew she wouldn't run away. She would never be that type of person. So that was...
Would she have ever left her kids?
No.
Happy birthday to you.
Automatically, as a sheriff, I know that mothers don't leave their children. And there's obviously never a good time for anybody to become missing. But the timing was terrible.
Was there a part of you that just went, it can't get any worse?
On more than one occasion.
My gut tells me there's something catastrophically wrong with this scenario.
By the time floodwaters receded, authorities believed one of 3 men knew where Crystal was.
Got the boyfriend, got the ex-husband. Well, then the uncle was making such noise about everything, I started thinking about him.
21 months later, one would be on trial for murder.
think I asked direct questions. I don't know that they're tough questions per se.
When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives? So you would encourage Democrats to work with Donald Trump on an issue like health care?
That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand. That means a civil conversation with perspective.
Sunday morning, Wicked Oscar nominee Cynthia Erivo. A few words from Flo, plus 100 years of The New Yorker. Listen for the trumpet.
It was almost like being face to face with the devil.
Women riding bicycles dismembered.
She just vanished.
48 hours reports. I fought and fought.
911, what is your emergency?
She disappeared off the face of the earth.
Ever think in your wildest dreams someone might want to kill you?
This almost became a game of psychological warfare.
You're caught. You're gonna go down.
Stream 48 hours, 24/7.
CBS Sunday night.
Here we go.
The ultimate tradition continues.
What I've seen, it's like chaos.
America's longest-running news magazine show is back.
For 60 minutes!
60 minutes.
With a new season.
Hey, let's go.
You're willing to talk about anything. I'm open to all of it. Ask me the hard-hitting questions. So how do you get over the nerves? Honestly, it's a whole bunch of mind
The most influential people.
Who's the best coach in college football?
Let me see a mirror so I can look at it.
Are you a billionaire yet?
None of your business, man. You trying to get me robbed?
Investigative journalism.
Am I getting a real look at what life is like in here today? Absolutely not.
Do you think people visiting know that these were looted?
When stories threaten our way of life, 60 Minutes demands answers.
This is the pager that Hezbollah was using.
Do you have hope that you may find him yet?
They were asking me to do something that was illegal.
They're fighting for faulty parts?
Yeah.
What is the most important takeaway for our audience?
How big of a problem is doping?
Where was the military?
Why are people suspicious?
That sounds like a problem.
How is this possible?
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Whoa.
Wow.
What is going on?
I'm Scott Pelley.
I'm John Worth.
I'm Leslie Stahl.
I'm Bill Whitaker.
I'm Sharon Alfonsi.
I'm Cecilia Vega.
I'm Anderson Cooper.
This is 60 Minutes.
The CBS News original.
Showtime, baby.
It's time for 60 Minutes Sunday on CBS. Don't miss a minute. Now streaming. What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
I'm not asking that we ignore disability, rather that we do not ignore ability.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
Try to get a boat out here.
Watch the water, man. Watch the lift the baby.
Baytown has picked up 32.9 inches.
The house is totaled, all my furniture is totaled.
Can you get to the top of your vehicle?
It was horrible. The rain wouldn't stop. It just would not stop.
District Attorney Cheryl Leek says despite the horrific flooding from Hurricane Harvey in Baytown, Texas, a suburb of Houston, the investigators were determined to find Crystal McDowell.
We had deputies that were flooded out of their homes. One of our investigators lost his entire house. Our local Texas Ranger and his wife were flooded out of theirs.
And yet they showed up for work.
Yep.
Every day.
Yep. Everybody.
All day looking for this woman.
Everybody.
But weather was not their only challenge. If Crystal had met with foul play, the sheriff says there was a growing list of people to question.
She was extremely social. She had lots of friends. She had been a flight attendant for 10 years and then had become a real estate agent.
On the top of the list, Crystal's Uncle Jeff, who cared for Crystal after her parents died when she was 11 years old.
And our main objective is just to get Crystal back home.
He was the person that was extremely emotional and reported her missing, but then he kept getting in the way of the investigation.
Getting in the way by going through Crystal's townhouse with other family members, potentially tainting important evidence.
This is not a game to us. This is not a hobby. This is what we do.
Crystal's family even hired a private investigator.
but you don't bring on some amateur super sleuth wannabe when you're in the middle of a missing persons investigation.
Also on the list, the men romantically linked to Crystal. There was Steve McDowell, Crystal's ex-husband, a shipping manager. In June 2017, the couple went through what many described as an amicable divorce after 10 years of marriage and 2 children, a boy Madden and a girl Maui.
And what was his story for Friday morning?
That she never showed up, that she was supposed to show up and she just never did.
That morning at 7:01 on August 25th, Steve, who had the kids, says he received a text message from Crystal. It read, "On my way. Do you have water? Looks like I may stay here with the kids. It seems just like rain." But Uncle Jeff Walters says that Steve showed him another text that Crystal allegedly sent around 9:30 that morning, saying she had changed her mind and she planned to stop by, pick up the kids, and take them to Dallas.
They just said it just didn't sound like her, and that nobody knew where she was, nobody had heard her voice, and they just knew that something wasn't right.
What did he tell authorities about their marriage, their relationship?
He told them that they were fine, he didn't mind the divorce, and everything was just hunky-dory.
In fact, Crystal was living with Steve and the kids in a house she helped him buy while her townhouse was being renovated.
He had such a passion of love for her that it was almost unhealthy.
Cindy Searate is Crystal's aunt.
Like if she wanted her feet rubbed, he would rub her feet. If she wanted her hair brushed, he would brush her hair.
Is it fair to say that she wore the pants in the family?
Yes, most definitely.
But over time, they grew apart.
He didn't challenge her, was the word. She wanted to be the best she could possibly be, and Steve was okay with just stepping back, being, the house person.
He was the dad. She was more of the provider.
Krista McDowell, Steve's daughter from a previous relationship, was at Texas A&M University when she heard the news Crystal was missing.
Because he loved being around the kids. They're his life. She was his life, and they were his life.
To the sheriff, it certainly didn't seem like Crystal's ex-husband knew anything about her disappearance.
But he was very cooperative with us, very, very kind, very friendly, and he immediately says that he wants to help.
It was Crystal's new boyfriend, Paul Hargrave, who the sheriff really wanted to speak with. Paul owned a local jewelry store and had been dating Crystal for a few weeks.
The last place that we have her is in the Baytown area, leaving Paul's house.
She seemed in love with him. They seemed perfect together. She was happy.
So happy that Crystal had posted on Facebook just 2 days before she disappeared. "I've never been happier in my whole life than I am right now. God is so good."
Well, we had talked about going to Europe, and she got a ticket to go with me to Belgium next month.
Investigators would learn Crystal had also invited Paul to go on a family cruise. The only caveat? Steve, her ex-husband, was going too.
And I told her, well, gosh, I'd love to go, but I think it's going to be awkward for me to be there with the ex-husband. So she had asked him to refrain from going, and I know that that didn't go well. She had stressed to me that he was pretty upset about that.
Which is why, Paul said, he was deeply concerned when Crystal disappeared after she left his home in her black Mercedes, which was also missing.
I hope and pray that, she's okay and she's going to come back to us.
Paul Hargrave. So he went on national TV and spoke with CBS This Morning's Michelle Miller.
What do you think happened to her?
I'm not sure. I don't know. But we're just trying to focus on finding her and assisting the police with whatever we can assist them with.
But Sheriff Hawthorne says he became suspicious after Paul failed to tell authorities about security footage from his home, showing the last time Crystal was seen alive.
She actually walked right through this living room at 7:09. One of my cameras picked that up. I think she was seen leaving the driveway at 7:10.
Paul shared the tapes, not with investigators, but with the media.
So immediately we're like, well, why would he be turning it over to the media but yet my investigators don't have those videos.
Intentional or oversight on his part?
I don't know, because it took us a few days to get it. So obviously every hour that ticked off, he became the sheriff's person of interest, that's for sure.
Surrounded by the chaos of both a natural disaster and suspicious characters, the case stalled. Mostly, says the sheriff, because investigators couldn't agree on which direction to go in.
Some of the investigators that were involved in this would say, you know, I think it's Steve, and some would say, I still can't get over Jeff, and I'm still looking at Paul.
See this black car right here? This Mercedes?
But then, finally, a break in the case. Crystal's Mercedes was spotted by a friend.
I will give the family credit for finding that vehicle.
So now they knew where the car was, but who put it there? And what would they find inside?
Weather and time deteriorate evidence, physical evidence.
Can see clearly now. Clearly, CBS Mornings.
Weekdays on CBS.
Yeah!
Tony, coming?
No, I'm gonna stick around for an hour. Hey!
CBS Mornings Plus with Adriana Diaz and Tony DeCopel, right after CBS Mornings.
It's just like mornings.
Plus fun. Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day.
Politics isn't a game. When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives? Politics is about policy. So you would encourage Democrats to work with Donald Trump on an issue like healthcare? I'm a voracious consumer of information, and I'm impatient. I don't like to be spun. Do you know if there are active terror cells in the United States right now? To be moderator of Face the Nation means bringing the most powerful stakeholders to the table to become better informed.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
While America's relaxing policies around social media and the internet, Germany is cracking down on lies and vitriol online.
How do people react when you take their phones from them?
They are shocked.
Which approach makes more sense? Plus, Timothy Chalamet only on 60 Minutes.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go with the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes.
Like a John Grisham novel come to life.
Real lives.
He pointed a gun to me and said, "This is the day you die." And he shot me.
Real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
I'm an innocent man, and I hope the whole world can see it now.
Catch the latest episodes. Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
The all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This is CBS.
The cops were here busting in doors to find out where this lady is.
How are you, Brian Hawthorne?
Sheriff Hawthorne could not believe what he found when he arrived at Crystal's Mercedes in the Motel 6 parking lot.
Well, you could get in the car because it was unlocked and the keys were sitting on the console.
Did that strike you as odd?
Oh, very odd. My criminal investigation captain told me, he said, I feel like it's been staged.
Set up for someone to take it?
Correct.
But whoever had left the car there to be taken did not anticipate the massive flooding in the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey.
The water had risen. You couldn't get it out of the parking lot.
And that was finally a break in your direction.
Correct.
Crystal's Mercedes was finally towed from the motel and processed. But floodwaters in Houston made it impossible to get results back from the crime scene lab.
A lot of their majors and captains and sergeants and investigators' homes were going underwater. It was chaos for everybody.
There are just a lot of moving parts at this point.
We're just going to get this thing started, y'all, and
48 hours was granted unprecedented access inside the sheriff's war room.
You know, in interviewing Stephen, he was telling us he was making calls from certain locations. He didn't make those, he was actually mobile. He is denying knowing Paul existed until 2 days ago. I don't believe that.
The investigation had taken a toll on D.A. Leak, who had lost all hope.
I know she's dead. There has been no activity on any of her credit cards, debit cards, nothing, you know, and she doesn't have a cell phone. Nobody leaves anymore without a cell phone.
Sheriff Hawthorne, deputies, and Texas Rangers expanded their focus from finding Crystal to finding her killer.
We've got a handful of folks that need to be interviewed. What else do you guys see that's up on this board that we need to get done? Because this stuff's going to start drying up on us if we don't jump on it.
Paul is just soaking up all the attention.
Yeah, he is, and
he loves it.
And he's best buddies with Uncle Jeff, too. That's what I don't understand. It's getting more and more interesting about Uncle Jeff, isn't it? As of about midnight last night, the net has widened, and it's husband, boyfriend, uncle.
Early in the investigation, the top persons of interest had been brought in for questioning. In his police interview, Paul pointed the finger at Steve.
Did you have anything to do with the disappearance?
Absolutely not. I don't understand even that's been insinuated, and I don't like it.
Jeff Walters was no fan of Crystal's new boyfriend, Paul.
He reminds me of Hannibal Lecter, and he creeps me out.
And Steve stuck with his story, that Crystal never showed up at his house.
we polygraphed two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Steve and Paul?
Steve and Paul, that is correct.
And how did they do?
Steve failed, and I'll let Paul tell you how he did.
He insinuated, he didn't use those terms, but he called me a liar.
But security cameras don't lie. Focusing on the location of the car, deputies began gathering video from nearby businesses. A camera at a Shell gas station next door to the motel appears to have captured one of their 3 persons of interest.
It looks like he's getting out and he's putting something in the trash can, and he's stuffing it all the way down, like to his elbow.
Like a bag, or?
Yeah, it looked like clothing is what it looked like.
Deputies say it is Steve McDowell, and it's what McDowell keeps glancing at that makes the investigators sit up and take notice. The Motel 6.
You could see that he's looking over, and he's looking to see if the car is still there, and it was. We recovered the trash can, and the problem is all the contents had floated out of it.
Because of the hurricane.
Because of the storm.
Then investigators received different security video showing Steve in action, right in the Motel 6 parking lot.
You just see somebody park the car, and someone that resembles her ex-husband getting out of it.
And what does that say to you?
Says that my person of interest has changed. I remember I'm the one that's still looking at Paul.
The videos are purely circumstantial evidence, but
that's where I'm going with this.
Okay.
For the first time, investigators are all heading in the same direction.
Confront Steve about where is she.
But Steve was still insisting he had nothing to do with Crystal's disappearance.
This is what I carry.
So they turned to someone else in the family's inner circle for help. Crystal's aunt, Cindy Searate.
I said, Cindy, I need you to stay close to Steve. I said, we need communication, and he may not communicate with us, and he may communicate with you.
Every day. I was just praying every day that I went that he would say something.
Investigators were becoming increasingly frustrated.
When you have no body, that's a huge hindrance. The way someone's killed, where they're found, that generally can give you an idea of who killed them.
Hi, guys and gals. We've been asked by Chambers County to go ahead and search for Crystal.
Deputies called upon an experienced volunteer search and rescue organization, Texas EquiSearch, to help find Crystal.
Let's remember that this place flooded real bad, so if she was dumped in this area, let's hope that she got washed up in maybe some tree lines and stuff, did not end up in the water.
Paul joined the searchers, and Uncle Jeff Walters pitched in.
He's offered a $10,000 reward, and I offered a $5,000 reward.
The more investigators dug in, the more things didn't quite add up.
This is a case about lots of secrets, double lives on many people's parts. It's one of those cases, I think I've seen it all. I've never seen anything like this before.
Here comes a big one. What I've seen, it's like chaos.
This is the pager that Hezbollah was using.
How was this possible?
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Whoa.
Wow.
Ask me the hard-hitting questions. I'm open to all of it.
60 minutes. Is this what you want?
60 minutes.
60 minutes! It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes. Sundays on CBS.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights
What a finish at the final round of play.
and in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
Go to the ends of the earth.
We'll hit the heights.
A great adventure together.
And reach for the stars.
Star power. I like it.
So cool.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Something that's undeniable.
With mindfulness.
innovative,
Magical.
It's like being a child.
and truly original reporting.
God, you do your research. I tell a good story.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
No matter how you start your day, one thing is clear.
Actually, two things. Pretty sure it's three.
Guys, whether it's news, money, health, or wellness, sports, movies, or even inspiration.
Clearly, CBS Mornings is the place to be. That's like 7 things.
Okay, clearly, I'm bad at math, always been.
Clearly.
Okay. Clearly, CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7 on CBS.
What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
Anyone that doesn't agree women should be in the submarine force has to ask themselves why they would think about that.
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
Life is a little bit different now.
It's gonna take a while to get used to. And I say it to myself that I can't make this about me.
When we put people before politics.
What would happen if it was harder for Mexican residents to come over to work in Presidio?
I think we'd be in serious trouble. Are you okay, ma'am?
What happens when you experience the story?
I'm shocked at how devastated this neighborhood is. How bad is it in your house?
Look at it.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
Here in Chicago.
Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
what are you doing today?
About to jump out of a perfectly good
Jumping
airplane.
out of a plane. Whose idea was this?
Steve.
Steve, your idea?
5 years before her disappearance, it seemed like Crystal and Steve McDowell were on top of the world.
How high are we right now? What does that say?
6,000 feet.
The jump had been a 33rd birthday gift from Steve.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. That's what's up. Hey, high five. Hey, look, your husband lived too. What a bonus.
Now Crystal's ex-husband was the main person of interest in her disappearance. There were those security tapes. And DA Cheryl Leak says they had discovered Steve had lied about their so-called friendly divorce.
What did you find out as the investigation went along?
That he didn't want the divorce. What we were getting from the family is that he was distraught, had always been distraught every time she tried to leave him.
It was early on when things started not going well.
LJ Adams, a bail bondsman and Crystal's good friend, says the relationship was troubled right from the start.
Judging from the things that she said, Steve McDowell is a very, very self-centered, selfish, manipulative person. He just got to where he wanted things his way, and he wanted it that way and right now. And if it didn't work out or she couldn't do it at that moment, it would be a temper tantrum.
In 2008, just 1 year after they married, Crystal filed for divorce. But LJ says she didn't go through with it back then because Steve had made threats.
It was always like, well, if you leave me, you know, I'm just going to kill myself.
Emotional blackmail.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. But he knew what to say and what to do.
Dexter. Come on.
But Krista McDowell says her father is not that man. She knows him as a loving father with a playful side.
He's a really goofy guy. Like, that's the best way I could describe him.
Fun guy?
Fun guy.
And even though her father was in and out of her life for most of her childhood, there was a brief period of time when she lived with Steve and Crystal.
I was in high school, so it was like 8th grade to sophomore year. I guess I was 14 to about 16.
She admits the relationship between Crystal and her father was turbulent, but says he was not the only one at fault.
Both weren't perfect, and they both had their issues. I just think that they were very toxic for each other, and they made each other crazy. Whenever they were together, it was never a happy ending.
She was hopeful things would get better once they finally got divorced. But after Crystal officially filed the paperwork in February 2017, Krista says her father began acting strangely.
So in March, I noticed that my dad had been acting weird on Facebook. Then he also changed his profile pictures to it was a grave, and then it was a Grim Reaper profile picture. And then he made it a picture of him and Crystal. And then he took that off, and then he made it say no profile picture.
In a short period of time?
This was all in a matter of 2-3 days.
Sheriff Hawthorne would learn that shortly after Crystal filed for divorce, she had called 911 and told police that Steve had disappeared with their kids.
She had given Steve the kids, and he essentially did not bring the kids back.
For a few days?
For a few days.
And did he threaten to hurt himself and the kids?
Had kind of put out an allegation and a threat that, he would harm himself and Crystal and the kids.
Steve eventually returned the children unharmed, and no charges were filed. He later explained to his daughter that he had become upset after discovering that Crystal had numerous affairs while they were married.
But he said he was still in love with her?
Yes. And he said, I love her with all my heart, but I just can't let her keep tearing me down like this.
So he was okay with getting a divorce at that point?
He was accepting of it. He thought it was for the best. He thought maybe he could, get his life in order then.
But Crystal's Aunt Cindy says Steve was just not ready to let go. Remember that cruise they were supposed to go on? Cindy says Steve actually planned to propose to Crystal again, even though they had just been divorced.
He literally bought some clothes for both of them, a white dress and a white suit, and literally he was going to propose.
But Krista says her father told her this was all his ex-wife's idea.
My dad told me just the other day that she had mentioned, how would you feel about getting remarried on the cruise? It's like a fresh start.
Do you think that's true, that she said that to him?
Yeah.
I don't believe Crystal would ever lead him to believe that. I really don't.
This was a fantasy in his head?
I believe that.
In early August, it seemed Crystal had moved on and was dating Paul Hargrave. Cindy Searate says at first, Crystal tried to keep it a secret from Steve, even though she was still living with him.
And she said, Aunt Cindy, I have to keep this quiet. He will kill me.
But by August 23rd, just 2 days before she disappeared, Crystal made that Facebook post and had disinvited Steve from the cruise. D.A. Leak thinks this might have been the start of Steve's final unraveling.
Steve was probably more upset about not going on the cruise because he thought they were going to rekindle their romance.
And there was more.
She was a financial meal ticket to him.
L.J. Adams says Crystal had recently decided to cut Steve off financially.
Because he was just spending money, just ridiculously just spending money. And at that point, she just said, I can't do this anymore, Steve.
Was it just losing her, Cheryl, or was it he was losing his whole life? Someone else was sliding into his position.
His whole life, his whole lifestyle.
As cleanup from Hurricane Harvey was underway, investigators had cleared Paul Hargrave and Crystal's Uncle Jeff.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
They were now convinced Steve McDowell had the motive to murder his ex-wife and that he had dumped her car at the Motel 6. But how did he get home? This security video from a nearby Walmart would provide that answer.
We spot a bicycle on the service road, Interstate 10 service road.
Investigators were convinced it was Steve McDowell.
For you, the surveillance footage is the turning point in the case.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Authorities were closing in on Steve McDowell, and the stakes were only getting higher because he still had the children.
We could potentially be minutes or hours away from somebody losing control.
Again.
Again.
It's almost life or death for these kids.
Correct.
What happens when the world's best journalists come together?
This was an entire building. It will take years to rebuild.
We're from CBS News, American television.
You get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This case,
it's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
No matter how you start your day, one thing is clear.
CBS Mornings is the best way to start your day.
I can see clearly now.
My morning routine.
The first thing I do when I wake up is turn off the alarm.
I try to remember where I put my phone down.
One alarm goes off at 4 a.m.
I need not 1, not 2, but...
And I'm out the door at 4:15.
3 snoozes to get out of bed fully coherent.
How much detail are you looking for?
I love a bath full of bubbles. The more bubbles, the better.
I'm very quick with the actual coffee, shave, shower, dressed out the door, but all around that is just pure chaos. For example, this morning, these are dirty socks.
You want my honest answer? Am I a morning person? I gotta be honest. I wish mornings started at like 10 a.m.
Can I say that? Clearly.
It's a bright, bright, bright way to start your day. CBS Mornings weekdays at 7 on CBS.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
What happens when we follow the human side of the headline?
I was in tears.
Life is a little bit different now.
It's gonna take a while to get used to. And I said it to myself that I can't make this about me.
You get the all-new CBS Evening News.
He kept coming in and talking. He'd come in every day and sit there 5 hours or so and just, nope, wasn't me.
District Attorney Cheryl Leak knew Steve McDowell had killed Crystal. But knowing it and proving it were two different things.
We didn't have enough to arrest him.
And she says McDowell seemed to understand that.
Was he arrogant, helpful, cooperative?
Arrogant and aloof. There was a game. He's just gaming us, he thinks. At this point, we have no direct evidence. We just have circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence has as much weight in a court as direct evidence, but you just need more of it.
Leak says the evidence that finally brought the case home for her was that security video from this Walmart, showing how McDowell probably got home after ditching Crystal's car.
We had him buying the bike and riding it out.
What happens next?
We bring him back in.
Day after day, investigators were telling McDowell they were successfully gathering more and more evidence, a ploy to wear him down.
He was just like melting, You could see that it was getting to him. You could tell he wasn't eating, he wasn't sleeping. His face had sunken in.
There's no telling what Steve may be trying to tell the kids. That's reason.
Sheriff Brian Hawthorne says investigators were under pressure too.
We can't wait.
And deeply concerned about just how much might be too much for McDowell.
At the time when all this is taking place, he has got custody of his children.
I kept thinking, he's going to kill those kids. He's going to kill those kids.
Once again, Steve voluntarily came in for questioning. But Cheryl Leak wasn't taking any more chances. She'd been in touch with Family and Protective Services and convinced the agency to remove the McDowell kids from his home that evening and place them with their Aunt Cindy.
We knew psychologically that that would be the final straw for him, his kids being gone.
He would have nothing left.
Right.
And what was his response?
He just about collapsed.
Exhausted, McDowell said he wanted to go home, but promised he would return in the morning ready to talk.
He said, I'll tell you everything.
Without enough evidence to arrest him and knowing a full confession was their only real chance of finding Crystal's body, the sheriff allowed his prime suspect to walk out the door.
That was a big risk that he wouldn't run or kill himself.
It was a risk.
I've been a crime reporter for 25 years. I have never heard of a department saying, go home and get your affairs in order. I mean, that's the part I go, really? Like, they let him go home?
But see, this is the thing. We had the kids.
And taking them is a moment Sheriff Hawthorne will never forget.
We knew that these kids were probably never going to see their mother again.
Or their father, as a free man.
Or their father as a free man. Can you give me a minute?
Yes.
Both of the children came out and gave every one of us bear hugs. And that's when you realize the totality and the impact that family violence has on children.
A few hours after Steve McDowell's youngest children were taken from him, he summoned his older daughter, Krista, to come home from college immediately.
I was at work, and I work at a bar, so I work pretty late.
Krista McDowell says she was confused when her father texted her in the middle of the night.
He said, your little brother and sister are going to go live somewhere else for a while.
She was already planning to head home later that day.
And he was like, is there any way you can be here sooner? You probably won't see me for a while unless you come see me in person before then. And so I got in my car, 3:30 in the morning, drove all the way to Baytown.
2 hours later, it was the beginning of the end of Krista's life as she knew it.
It was dark still. I knocked on his door and he let me in. He told me that at 10 a.m. the Rangers were gonna come pick him up.
She says at first her father seemed more annoyed than anything.
Did you think he had anything to do with it at that point?
No, not at all. Not a single hint that he had anything to do with that.
Did you ask him if he had anything to do with it?
Yes, I'd asked him multiple times, like, are you guilty? And he was just no, I just don't understand, why I'm getting blamed. And the entire time he pleaded to me, his innocence.
Krista says, though clearly anxious, it mostly seemed like her father was just trying to take care of business, giving her photo albums, financial statements, even the keys to his beloved Mustang. Until the conversation took an abrupt turn.
He looks at me and he says, the Rangers told me that if I tell them where the body is, that they'll lessen my punishment. And I said, well, you don't know where the body is. How would you know? And he was like, what if it's true? And I asked him, do you know where the body is? And he just looked away from me and just bawled his eyes out. And at that point, I knew, he knew where it was.
What did you think at that point?
I don't know. What do you think? If someone that you love and you've sat here and defended the whole time tells you they're guilty, what do you think?
Did you think he had actually confessed to you at that point? Even though he never said the actual words?
Because I asked him what he did over and over. I begged him to tell me. And he was just I can't tell you what I did. And then all of a sudden, we heard a noise and he stood up and he was like, they're here.
And then all of a sudden he's gone.
Yeah. I literally dropped to my knees and just cried.
Police brought Steve McDowell back to the station to deliver his much-anticipated confession. But the man who had kept them guessing about so much for so long was about to make them guess again.
He's yanking your chain.
Yeah, he
back
is.
and
forth.
And I'd had it. At this point, I'd had it.
CBS Mornings is clearly fun.
Money saving. Dollar Jill's here to tell us what it means for you.
Clearly delish.
So what's on the menu today?
Clearly, CBS Mornings weekdays at 7 on CBS.
What happens when the world's best journalists come together?
Write a prescription for the healing of America.
We're retired and this is our paradise.
Now it's gone.
You get the stories of America every night. You get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This is CBS.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. We'll hit the heights. And reach for the stars.
Star power. I like it.
Ta-da!
I want to be part of this.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
You've probably heard of the NCIS from the hit TV series, but we're about to take you inside its real-life work. Listen to 48 Hours NCIS early and ad-free on the 48 Hours Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts.
Okay, let's go.
You guys good?
Start at the beginning.
All right, we good?
Keep going. It's the clock. It's ticking.
Off we go.
60 minutes. Is this what you want?
60 minutes.
60 minutes!
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
Saturday, September 9th.
I didn't sleep much. Literally, I could not wait for daylight to come up.
Steve McDowell agreed to meet with Sheriff Hawthorne and the investigation team one more time and finally provide an answer to the question, what happened to Crystal?
My understanding from our communication was that you were kind of ready to be honest about some things.
We needed a confession. We needed somebody to take us to her body.
Sheriff Hawthorne watched in a nearby room as McDowell shared the details of the morning Crystal came home after a night with her boyfriend.
I love her. I would do anything in my life to bring her back.
I think they got into an argument when she got home, and I think he was mad that she had stayed out all night.
Is that when she told you that she didn't love you anymore?
Yeah.
When she told you she didn't want to be with you or have anything to do with you?
And it seems that was enough for Steve McDowell to make a terrible choice.
He describes and essentially shows that he strangled her from behind.
So she had no idea he was coming.
Yes.
I squeezed her behind her like this.
Okay, like a chokehold or something? Did she say anything when that was going on, or did she fight, or what happened?
She was scaring her.
How did you eventually know that she was no longer alive?
I stopped food.
And what'd you do after that?
I covered her face with the bag.
And then you put her in the car?
I tied her up, put her in the trash bags, and put her in the car.
And then McDowell says early the following morning, he drove off to dispose of Crystal's body, leaving their two children home alone.
The body was found right in here.
McDowell leads investigators here. A densely wooded area off an access road not far from his house.
Steve drives the detectives and the investigators out here.
Our cameras were the only ones allowed at the crime scene as investigators began their arduous work.
The terrain was pretty tough because it was a lot of work just trying to clear the trees and the limbs so that we could bring the body out.
At the end of a long search, the sheriff and DA share a moment.
It was just relief.
Today at 2:45 p.m., Crystal's body was discovered, and Stephen Wayne McDowell, 44, has been arrested, charged with murder.
If he had not told you exactly where the body was, would she have ever been found?
No.
Once Steve McDowell showed investigators where the body was, he was brought here to the Chambers County Jail. Now, even though he confessed to strangling Crystal, that may not be the end of it. In Texas, a defendant can claim they killed someone out of sudden passion, which could mean as little as 2 years in prison. Which is exactly what Steve McDowell did in June 2019 during his trial for murder. McDowell testified that Crystal's death was a result of a spontaneous hug that got out of control. But D.A. Leak gave the jury a different point of view.
Do you think this was premeditated?
Yes, without a doubt.
And this was not just he snapped?
Well, you can snap and still think about it. I think he just decided, if I can't have her, nobody can.
After 5 days of testimony, evidence, and argument, it only took 3.5 hours for the jury to reach a verdict: guilty. 1 day later, the same jury sentenced Steve McDowell to 50 years in prison for the murder of his ex-wife.
We've been very fortunate. The jury saw it the same way the law enforcement officers and the district attorney's office did.
It feels good. I think they made the right decision. So with 50 years, he will have to serve at least 25 before he's eligible for parole.
I hope he never makes it out of there. He deserves whatever he gets.
For the kids, it's just a sad situation all the way around.
Both parents are gone now. Basically, those kids are motherless and fatherless, just like Crystal was.
Happy birthday to you.
Which brings us back to the other victims in this case, the children. It was Aunt Cindy who was tasked with telling an 8-year-old boy and his 5-year-old sister the truth.
And I just grabbed their hands and I said, "We found your mommy. And she's in heaven. And your daddy's in jail for taking your mother's life." And at that point, Madden looked up and he said, "Okay." He said, "I can deal with this." And Madden grabbed his sister and they hugged and he said, "I love you, Maui." He said, "I will always take care of you."
And Krista promises to always be a part of their lives.
I thought about my brother and sister and I was like, they have no one. I need to be the bigger person right now and I need to be the person they look up to.
Crystal loved him with every part of her being. She wanted them to have the wonderful life.
You think they'll be okay?
I know they will be, without a shadow of a doubt.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here? What is the answer then?
Do you know why? You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis? You're not answering my question.
This really is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense? What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis